Welcome to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name's Jared Mello, and I'm the Shepherd of Black Sheep. Welcome, everyone, as you pour on in here. It's been an interesting day for me. I might get into it a little bit later, but we're going to go over at least a couple videos. One, Brian Entin has a video out today, thankfully. After a couple of days off, he's back at home in Florida. He's reunited with his dog, which is cool. We're also going to go over an Ashley Banfield video where she goes over 10 mistakes that she thinks law enforcement has made in the case, things they could have done better. I know what I think the biggest mistake is, but after we watch that video, we'll go over it with everyone, what we think. I know what I think it is. Miss Kim, new mod, Miss Kim, by the way, welcome. Bella, Rammer Jammer, Christy, I just saw you comment on that short, Christy. I'm glad that person is an ex, of course. George, no demerit for George today. Tech Death Hippie, welcome. Jury Richard's guilty, all charges tonight. I guess that wasn't a surprise, right, Bella? That's what I was hearing. But I didn't go over that much of the case. But maybe now that it's over, we might do a recap on another night. But do you agree with that decision, Bella? Matt, welcome. Glad you're early here. Today we have a Brian Entin and an Ashley Banfield video to go over. Digital forensics for her. That's what got her. That makes sense. I'm actually, like I said, I'm not as familiar with that case. I know other people have been talking about it. Tim, what's shaking? Yes, Bella just mentioned it. That guilty on all charges. Stacks and Gem, what's shaking? From what it sounds like, that's a good thing. It's a good thing Corey there was guilty on all charges. I think it's a good thing. What do you think, Tim? Do you agree with that decision? Sentencing will beat 13 on Eric's birthday. Okay. Mr. Rooster, what's shaking there, sir? As you pour on in here, remember to like the video on your way in. Leave your D and add that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Everyone here is already subscribed. I know that. But I go live 5 or 6 nights a week and talk about true crime and current events at a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern usually. And we have an awesome flock of black sheep here in the live stream as well, in the live chat, which is awesome. We have quite the eccentric crowd here, which I would have it no other way, by the way. Because I'm Mr. Eccentric myself. But let's jump in here. Let's jump into the Brian Entin video first. Then we'll get into the Ashley Banfield video. Julie, good evening. Teresa, good evening.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. I appreciate all the support. It is day 44 in the search for Nancy Guthrie. You can tell my backdrop's a little different. I'm home now in Florida. Came home just to kind of recharge. See my dog. See hi, Scout. Oh, I missed her so much.
Oh, the Scout, Brian Entin's puppy. Look how much greener it looks in Florida than it does in Arizona, by the way. The desert, very dry, yellowish. Green in Florida, though.
So happy I'm home. But I'm obviously staying on the case, and there's been some developments. A new date that I have found that investigators are looking into. I just spoke to a neighbor who I hadn't spoken to before, so I'm going to get into that. Also, billboards. You guys have been sending me pictures. Billboards have now been going up in different parts of the country. And there's something else I forgot that's new today that I also got. Oh, yeah, something about Nancy's front door that someone in the neighborhood pointed out to me that I hadn't thought about before that could be important. I'm going to get into all of it in this episode. Brian Entin, investigative. Hey guys, so as I said, I'm back home in Florida. I was in Arizona for 42 days, which I can't believe. I think it's the longest I've ever been away from home before. I mean, I travel every week for stories pretty much, but I don't think I've ever stayed 42 days in one place nonstop. The Idaho murders, I was there, I think, for a month straight before I went home for a break. And then with Gabby Petito, I think it was the same, but Gabby Petito, where I was outside Brian Laundrie's was kind of easier because it was in Florida, so I could scoot home on the weekends sometimes. So I don't think I've ever been away from home for 42 days. But I'm not like some of you have messaged me like, oh, please don't give up on Nancy and don't stop covering the case constantly. And I'm not going to.
Yeah, Brian's not going to give up on the case. And for those of you who don't know, Corey Richins, guilty, found guilty. Utah mom, Corey Richins, guilty of fatally poisoning husband with fentanyl. So I'm sure most of you know already. Most of you are true crime fans, but just in case you didn't, guilty.
And I'm still going to be doing these episodes a lot. But I talked to my sources, like right now it just seemed like a good time to kind of just take a little recharge at home. I had some things to need to take care of. Obviously I was a little homesick. So it just felt like a good time to kind of recharge. And I'm going to obviously be going back to Arizona and staying on top of the case. And there's also some other cases and stories that I kind of put on the back burner that need my attention too. Some that you have also been following. So I'll be getting back to those too. But don't worry, like I'm not giving up on the Nancy Guthrie case. And I don't think it's going cold, by the way. Some of you have asked me that. I think it's taking some time, but I think there's going to be movement overall. But in this episode, a really interesting interview. This is a neighbor who I haven't interviewed before. Her name is Laura. She had some really interesting new information that I hadn't heard before. One is she started telling me about a new date that FBI agents are asking about and Pima County Sheriff's detectives. Remember, and you're going to hear her full interview in a second, but remember we knew about January 11th. We knew that they were keying in on January 11th and that they were asking neighbors for video from January 11th if they had seen anything suspicious on January 11th. So we knew that. But she told me that the detectives have also been asking her about January 24th.
January 24th. Interesting. So that's about a week before the disappearance. Maybe that is the night of the other day of the Nest Cam footage. Let's see what they say.
Which is the first I've heard of this. January 24th would have been the Saturday before.
Rammer Jammer, thank you for becoming a member there. Now you have access to the members only live streams, which is awesome. I've yet to decide when this week's will be, but maybe Wednesday or Friday. What day is today? Monday? Yeah, Wednesday or Friday. Probably Wednesday though.
Nancy went missing. So 8 days before Nancy went missing. And again, you're going to hear her explain this, but she said specifically they were looking for video from that day. They actually helped her go through her cameras to see if she had anything suspicious on them from January 24th. It's interesting that that's on a weekend and that January 11th is also on a weekend. It's just kind of stood out to me. I don't know if they think that this suspect may have been someone who worked during the week that would come and case the neighborhood on the weekends. That I don't know, but I know that they have been interested in January 24th, which is new, and that they were also interested in January 11th. And again, you're going to hear her explain that in a second. The other interesting thing she brought up to me, which hasn't been discussed much, is that Nancy Guthrie had a security gate on her front door. If you look at this, you can see it. There's like a gate, and many of you guys probably have these.
And guess what? I think this is something that AI video is going over, and I was saying to people, I haven't heard anything about a gate, but now here Brian Entin saying there's a gate. So now my ears are a little more perked up.
They're pretty common, but there was like a gate on the front door with a lock, and then you can see her, her normal door is behind it, but there's a security gate in the front. And Laura brought up an interesting point to me, and she just like knows the neighborhood. She has a security gate. She said, when those are locked, they're really, really difficult to get through. So she does not believe that the suspect who we saw on video was trying to get into Nancy's house through the front door, because she says if that security gate was locked, it wouldn't have worked out. It would have been very, very difficult. She believes that
well, they're calling it a gate, whether it's a door or a gate, they're calling that part a security gate. But what do you think about this? Because I know we've mentioned it before, but what do you think about it now that Brian's bringing it up?
that there may have been someone inside the house already that was about to take Nancy out, like an accomplice, and that he's at the front door waiting for them to open the door, waiting for that person to open the door so that he can assist in bringing Nancy out the front door, but that they didn't gain entry through the front door because of that security gate, she believes, which when you think about it, does make sense because those security gates, if it was locked, would be difficult to get through.
Well, let's rewind it so we can see what it is again. So that looks more like a storm door to me, right? So a lot of people have a storm door that's glass and they can replace it with a screen door. That's what that looks like more so than a gate.
Security gate, she believes, which when you think about it, does make sense because those security gates, if it was locked, would be difficult to get through. And I hadn't thought about that series of events and that possibility, and the way she described it makes sense. And you'll hear her again explain that in detail in this interview. And one last thing, remember the pictures that we have from the front of the suspect. One of them we know is from around when Nancy went missing. And the other one, I am told, despite the sheriff sort of pushing back on this, but I have a good source on it, that they believe it's from a previous day. Whether that day is January 11th, whether that's January 24th, I don't know. But it is interesting to me, again, that they are keying in on January 11th and January 24th as two very specific dates that are also on weekends, by the way. Something else, many of you have been sending me pictures of the billboards that you're seeing now, the Find Nancy Guthrie billboards. Remember in the beginning, there hasn't been a press conference in so long, but when the FBI were part of that initial press conference, they said that there were going to be billboards like this. We weren't sure exactly where they were going to go. I know that there are some, just because you've messaged me, in the Houston area, outside Houston. I know that there's one in Southern California, these electronic billboards. So it is kind of interesting that they're not focused on just Arizona, but they seem to be popping up kind of all over the region and in other states. And I know that some of them were up this weekend because you guys saw them. So I want to get to my interview with Laura because, again, there's a lot that she talked about that I hadn't heard before. Also, really, really nice lady. It was nice meeting all these people in the neighborhood who I'm still in touch with constantly. So I wanted you guys to hear my conversation with Laura. What are your thoughts? I mean, it's now, been more than 40 days. Where's your mind at right now?
So we're at day 43 today, I believe.
I think I've appreciated
And this is one of Nancy's neighbors, apparently.
Having a little bit of a break the last week or two, where it's Nancy's disappearance isn't in the media all the time, in part because it gives me a break because I've been contacted a lot. And it lets me kind of get on with my life and things that I've kind of put on hold for a while. But just like how I felt after the death of my parents, distance and time from the event gives you a little bit of calm and peace, but it also, you realize it's already been a month and I can't believe they've been gone for a month already. So it kind of both sides, feeling a bit of sorrow, along with feeling like personally it's given me a little more space with my neighbors and to kind of carry on with my life, but also in complete disbelief that we don't know where she is. And that is troubling to me. I understand it though, and I'm not faulting anybody, but does feel extra troubling. And I don't, I think about Nancy's daughters and son-in-law and grandchildren. How do they get on with their lives, and how do they get on and with this, knowing that their grandmother and mother are still missing?
Yeah, the sheriff said, he was asked, do you think this person can strike again? And he said, absolutely, which is not something I've heard.
Look at her. She's almost exasperated about that, chuckling a little bit. But I would be jumpy. I mean, if someone that was elderly just got abducted from your neighborhood successfully, no sign of her, no sign of whoever did it, That's good enough reason to be pretty jumpy, if you ask me.
Him say before, but then he went on to say, but we believe it was targeted, but we don't really know. Are you nervous? Are people nervous?
I saw that quote today, and I saw that he was just really talking with the NBC reporters. And I think it's a little bit ambiguous. I think it's targeted, but we're not sure. I'm just not quite sure what that means. But it did cause, my hair to raise up a bit when he said that. And it did give me, some time to think about what that means. And it made me a little bit uncomfortable being, a nearby neighbor.
Because this woman's what? In her 60s here? Yeah, probably 60s, right? Maybe early 70s. But if you're her, what can you do? Make sure you have a security system. Make sure you have a subscription to your Nest or Ring cams. Make sure you have a life alert. Make sure that you've done some trial runs with law enforcement, maybe even. They probably won't like it, but it's like, you know what? Screw you. My life is on the line here, perhaps, so let's make sure we get this right.
I was thinking about that today on my way home from my appointment. Like, okay, what does that mean? And does that mean there could be somebody else lurking around? Somebody that's just looking for easy targets? He said it was targeted, but targeted based on what? What's the target? Was it, I don't want to go through and give anybody ideas, but what was the target? Is it a ransom? Was it an easy, vulnerable person? Somebody living alone, somebody elderly? What's the target? What? So, and that's what.
Now, that's the one thing I could say to them all, that this won't help the Guthrie family, but to think it was targeted against Savannah as a punishment / revenge, in a way, the fact that it was targeting Savannah might make the other people feel a little bit better, because it's not about them, right? I think this was about Savannah Guthrie, getting to her somehow. So in a roundabout way, maybe that'll make the other people feel better. That doesn't help Nancy Guthrie. That doesn't help the Guthrie family now, though.
Kind of went through my mind today. What is the target exactly that they're talking about? It has to be one of the above. Somebody that, had some wealth, somebody who's vulnerable. Okay, one, somebody who's vulnerable, two, somebody who lives alone, three, someone with an easy to access home, four. I mean, you can go through 4 or 5 possible reasons she was targeted, including, having a famous daughter of some wealth.
Yeah. All right, guys, I want to introduce you to the sponsor of today's episode, Surfshark. Have you ever tried to watch a video, but it says that you can't watch it because of the country that you are in? Well, Surfshark will definitely splash Entin. I mean, you've lived here for more than a decade. It's a beautiful neighborhood. Do you have a sense of what may have happened? I mean, just knowing the area, I mean, what does your gut tell you?
My first thought was that it was a target based on who, her daughter.
Yeah. Like I've been saying, our first thoughts are probably correct oftentimes. And her first thought was it was targeted based on who her daughter is. And I would say more than likely that's correct.
I mean, that was my sense. Just from the start, I didn't really consider any other possibilities. In part because I knew she lived there. I knew who her daughter was. When I would walk by, I would always, I always noticed her house and whether she was there or not, and outside. And I always thought that was a potential, for me, the strongest possibility that maybe it was a crime of opportunity versus looking a little deeper at, other people in Tucson. This might just be someone that you became aware of that had a famous daughter. So that was always the reason I think somebody targeted, but who knows? I don't know the answer to that. And and I don't like to speculate, and I always also assumed it was 2 people, because of the person who was at the front door, and he was standing there, and I don't think he was the main person. I think he was the guy outside who was waiting for them to come out. Because if you have a gate like that, a security gate on the front door, you're not getting into that. You're never going to break into that security gate. I mean, I actually talked to a security guy about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he confirmed you're not breaking into those gates. So I think, and she has glass on both sides of the door, and I think he was trying to see in. So when he was standing there, he wasn't trying to figure out what to do. He was trying to look in to see what was going on. And also, because you have a security gate, the door, the wooden door, if that's open, it's hard to see inside if it's dark, because I have one of those. You can't really see if the door is open or not. So I think he was standing there waiting for someone to come out. And so I've always absolutely assumed there were at least 2 people, possibly 3. Being someone who has had to help my elderly mother at the time, who was only 120 pounds, try to get her up 3 or 4 stairs. It's hard. It's hard when someone is not wanting to be moved or is not able to move. So the thought that one person could move, a 140, 150 pound woman who's maybe not wanting to move is not, for me, reasonable to think that it would just be one person.
Like one person could do that, yeah.
Yeah, no. Having lifted my parents, right?
Yeah, I think that's one reason you talk about your parents. I think that's one reason so many people are so invested in this story.
Yeah.
Because they think about their own parents.
Yeah.
And you're always worried about your parents when they get old and people taking advantage. And you hear about all the scams today. You know what I mean? I think this resonates with people for that reason.
I think it does. And I think I am sure it's caused people to look at their own parents' living situation. I mean, my dad used to live right there in this, you can see, in that building attached to my house. And safety, we moved him there. That was one of the reasons, for his own safety. And so you think about your parents all the time. And I'm sure you don't want hindsight to be 20/20, but unfortunately, that's when you start looking at things like many of us have. We started examining our own homes and situations, and what else? Are we secure? Is there something more we can do? Can I have a brighter camera? Do I need more cameras?
So are you going to make changes for yourself, you think?
Yeah, without disclosing.
Yeah, I understand, but it's actually making you do things.
Yeah.
I guess I would too.
Yeah.
You're so close to Nancy's house. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, most people, I think, are kind of reconsidering their own situations and looking for vulnerability.
I mean, and that's one of the best things about true crime in general, is learning from the situations. Each case is going to have something different to learn. But in this case, people are going to really check up on their loved ones. All right. Is their security system working? Do they have a subscription to the Nest and Ring Cam? Are they safe and secure? Fill in the blank with whatever it is, right? Tragedies like this give people an opportunity to look at these things. But while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Likes are for the spirit animal of the show, Shadow the Night Owl, and Swift the Fox from David the Gnome. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And come say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. We have an awesome and supportive group of people here.
In fact, I know the sheriff's department.
And by the way, super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member supports the channel and gives you access to the members only live streams.
And I think they have a corps, like a volunteer corps, that will do security inspections for your home and look for vulnerabilities. And so I became aware of that, and I've been sharing that information with people who I happen to talk to.
Has the FBI or detectives, have they come here at all?
Yeah. I think the sheriff's deputies were here twice. FBI was here probably 3 times, including last Friday. They, of course, you get a knock at the front door. I'm like, And I can see, you know, I've got the big
Yeah.
window there. I can see who's there, and I made him flash his badge before I opened the door, which I wouldn't have done before, to be honest. And so they came. They had more dates they wanted to look at, and we sat and looked through my cameras.
Oh, specific dates?
Yeah.
Do you mind saying what dates those were? I mean, I know January 11th has been a big one with the other name. Did that one come up?
Yeah, we went back through, and I don't know if there was more to why they asked, because I've already gone through my cameras, and really there was nothing on there but wildlife. And the other date was the 24th.
The 24th of January, they were interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Do your cameras face like all over the sides of the house, or what?
I'd rather not say exactly where they face.
Yeah, I understand.
But the one that did, you know, record a series around that date were just picking up animals.
Animals,
Yeah.
okay. But they had specific dates they were interested in.
Yeah.
Did they seem anything else they asked you that sort of stood out?
No, I think they just wanted to. Maybe it was a different group of people. I'm not sure. I mean, it wasn't the same guys who came, but they just basically asked the same questions that I'd been asked before. We spent about maybe 25 minutes together, and that was it. We went through. I think in some part they want to make sure that people understand how to look through their cameras, and they're looking. And of course I do.
Yeah.
It's just I don't really have anything to show them, unfortunately. There's nothing on there. But I think in part they wanted to make sure that people.
So that's interesting, right? So she has cameras, security footage, but there's nothing really there worth showing. Interesting.
You know, we're accurately looking through the footage.
Yeah.
And I think in some cases I do know of some people that just turned over their footage and said, you know, you can, here's all these dates, please take a look. Mine aren't really worth doing that, because there's not much on there.
Has there been anything that stood out to you since you lived here for more than a decade? Like anything strange that's ever happened? Well, I'll ask you that first.
Yeah, one time I had some friends who were here. I was out, they were staying here, and they told me, hey, just let you know, there were some people that walked up to the front of your house, and they were taking a bunch of pictures of your house from the front. And I was just, you know, I didn't hire anybody to do any work, and I didn't give any permission.
That's interesting. People came up to her house and were starting to take pictures. That's pretty wild. I wonder what their excuse was for that. If they were trying to case the house or something, or was it something else? What do you think, chat? Do you think people taking pictures instantly nefarious, or is there a reasonable explanation somehow? So press 1, no, they were up to no good. Or press 2, nah, there's probably a reasonable explanation. And the question is, why were they taking pictures of her house? Up to no good? Or maybe there was a reasonable explanation.
To take pictures of the front of my house, and if you can't see the front of my house from the street.
Right.
You have to walk up my driveway. And so that was alarming. And I thought about that the other day, but this was 3 or 4 years ago. I'm just going to assume that they liked the look of my house.
Yeah, well, you do have a very nice house. So.
I just want to assume that maybe they liked the way it looked, but that was a little, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I'd never seen that before.
Well, and like you said, your house is like you really have to come up to it. Yeah. It's not anywhere near the road. One thing I've heard a lot from neighbors is, and even from some of my sources, is like there's a thought that one possibility is the person who did this could be close by, just because, you know, they haven't been able to track the cell phone from what we know from outside. You know what I mean? Like,
that's weird to me. I don't. And they did actually check. Actually, one more question that they did ask me last Friday is whether my internet went down that night. And I said, if it did, I was asleep, and it probably came up the next day. And plus, I have new internet service from that time to 2 weeks ago. I had to change internet service. So, but I looked back on my Xfinity account to see if it cut out, but I didn't find anything.
Okay.
So, Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, that's, it's entirely possible, but I kind of know who's in these, and they're all like me, they're all meaning, they're all kind of normal people.
Yeah.
I did, notify my day 1 or 2 or 3, notified I got a call with, I think it was a special agent, I think it was FBI, that there was.
And she mentioned there what we've already known is that they were asking people in the area, did you have outages of the internet? I'm pretty sure it was just a dead zone because I don't think it was a signal jammer, but it is interesting they were asking the question.
A recent turnover, and there's not that many rentals around here, but there was a rental nearby, and whoever lived there had moved out within a few days of this happening. They had moved out a few days before because the cars were gone. So I just became, see something, say something. So I thought it's probably nothing, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna call. I'm gonna talk to them and just let them know that there was somebody living there and they're not there anymore. And so I confirmed with a couple of the neighbors, did in fact you see those cars aren't there? He said, yeah, they just moved out.
Yeah.
And these neighbors that I spoke with didn't have any footage of it because they're stops at their driveway.
Well, that's the thing people don't get is the footage here, people's houses are set back.
Yeah.
It's not like footage from the front door is going to get people out on the street or,
Well, and I think in neighborhoods where it's just a regular neighborhood, houses are closer together and they're not set back behind, greenery, trees, shrubs. It wouldn't be that out of ordinary to catch cars passing by. I know in California, my house did. Every time I got in my car in the driveway, my neighbor's lights would go on from across the street.
Yeah.
I didn't like it, but I realized it's probably a good thing,
Right.
that anytime there's motion in my driveway, his cameras pick up my every movement. So so this is just not the kind of neighborhood where there are those kind of people. I pretty much know in all those houses, I know who lives in all those houses around the corner. I'm not going to stay at the street, but around the corner. Yeah. I know her next door neighbor. I know the people up the cul-de-sac. I know who everybody is. So it's, they're kind of all.
What's the mood among the neighbors? I mean, you seem pretty calm.
It varies. I mean, I'm always pretty calm, because the wheels just start spinning, and I want to go and find out what's going on. I'm not the person who goes and tries to pretend like it's not happening, or I want to know what's going on.
Yeah, and I mean, just the whole not knowing whether you're the Guthrie family or the neighbors, that's the hardest part. The hardest part is not knowing exactly what happened and not knowing, even though it's likely she's no longer with us. But the fact that you just don't know for sure, like that makes it worse in a way, in my opinion. You want to know. You just want to have it settled one way or the other at a point. But the fact that you don't know, there's been no arrests, no official suspects, unsettling.
On and I went out and talked to neighbors. I checked on some of my older neighbors to make sure they were okay within days of that happening, because I hadn't seen my one neighbor walking his dog, and I kept going to his house to see if he was there. So that's, I kind of, you see there's quite a few older folks in the neighborhood, and I like to consider I'm not one of the oldest in the neighborhood. Yeah. So I kind of felt like I have the bandwidth to go and check on a couple of neighbors and like the people right across her on the cul-de-sac, So I think people have different, there are people who don't want to talk to, they try to stay as far away from this as possible. They know what's going on, but they don't want to obviously talk to reporters. And I understand that for sure. They don't want to, but everybody's still, I talked to some neighbors a couple days ago, and everybody's still, pretty broken up about it.
Yeah, most of the neighbors.
Some people are still pretty traumatized.
I think so.
The ones who are more of her peers have known her for a long time.
And most of the neighbors have been like, "Oh, we're happy it's still on the news. Yeah. You guys should stick around. Like, we want them to find Nancy." There's been a few who have said, "Get out of here. It's time. You're vultures." It's
Oh.
been kind of a mix, but most people I think
Yeah.
want it to stay kind of top of mind in some ways.
Yeah, I probably would put myself in that group, because, and it's helpful to the Guthries. The more it stays in the news, top of mind, the more people, the chips are probably slowing down, right? And the more it stays in the news, the more.
And the big thing for me is I just don't know what they're even like hanging their hat on at this point. There's not much. The DNA in the house, even though it's not a good sample, they're going to try to do genetic genealogy. But then what? What else? Not too much, in my opinion. And just like they said also, on any issue, it's very rare, especially in these days, in this day and age, there's going to be a unanimous thought that, oh yes, everyone's all for them staying there, the media. Nah, in any group, there's going to be a small percentage of people that says, nah, get out of here, you're vultures. That's just the law of percentages.
People say, oh, that's right. Whatever happened with that case? So it keeps it top of mind. And I'm sure that it's helpful to law enforcement to keep it out there versus people forgetting about it. I think for me personally, I don't mind it. But then again, I don't live right next door.
Right. Yeah. I won't say where you are, but you're close.
I'm close.
Yeah.
Backyards.
Yeah.
But I know that there was somebody poking around in my neighbor's backyard at 3 a.m. last week, and he wasn't like one of you kind of media guys.
Yeah.
He's a new media guy, like a YouTube media.
In the night, you said?
YouTube guy. 3 a.m. She happened to be out with her dogs, letting her dogs out. She's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?"
On her property?
Well, her property.
And spoiler alert, the poor math that they didn't take, that's my number 2 biggest thing they've done wrong. It's kind of a part of the number 1, but we'll go over the number 1 in a minute.
The neighbor's property comes up to her wall, and they were on the other side. So it was technically her neighbor, but she was out in her yard. It'd like be seeing somebody on the other side of my wall there. And she went and talked to him. He's like, you can't be there. You're trespassing on somebody's property. And people have guns around here.
Yeah.
Some people have guns, and some people are more than happy to,
Also in the middle of the night like that.
3 a.m.
Yeah.
And he came up and talked to her, but that's still not okay.
Yeah. That's really scary.
Yeah. So I think people see all this open space, and I think I'm going to find her. I'm going to claim that money, and I want to be the one to find her. And so I'm going to step over there because there's no houses and there's all this open land, but it's actually somebody's property. You could see back here, there's 2 or 3 acres back here, and it belongs to someone, right? So that's the sort of thing people don't like.
Yeah, that's understandable.
They want people to step over the line.
Yeah.
And for the most part, the media, people like yourself, understand. You have to, to get information, you have to be able to be assertive. And you have to be able to go up to people, and you have to, and that's for the most part, people understand that, and they'll say yes or no. I don't want to talk, or I do want to talk. But it's these other people that aren't media trained. They don't know what the rules are, the laws are, that, I think for some people has been a nuisance.
Have you had any frustrations with law enforcement? I mean, we've heard so much about the sheriff since we got here.
Any frustrations with law enforcement? The $1 million question here. Let's see what they say, or what she says.
No, my first thought was hearing him talk. It was a little cringeworthy, because I thought, oh man, that was not probably the best thing to say. But I can't say that he's not doing his job, because I don't know what's happening behind the scenes. Maybe he's not as well media trained. I don't know. But so I can't criticize what he's doing, because I don't know what's happening. And that's okay. We should not know everything that's happening. It's really, if it in any way impacts the investigation, if it negatively, impacts the investigation, or it's giving too much information, just because people want to know doesn't mean they should. So I don't know which way. I don't know if he's doing a good job or a bad job. I just know that it's not necessarily my business. And if I don't like it, then there's the next election, you know.
Right.
But I think it's just he caught off guard with the media, and I understand that there was some things going on there too with his personal life. So,
anything else that you think is important?
No, other
you think
than that,
hasn't been reported or that people should know?
No, I just hope that people keep thinking about this case. I hope that people will continue to keep especially people in Southern Arizona, keep their eyes open. I can tell you, every time I go out in public, I am looking. It's like I've got Google glasses on, and I'm putting my little AI on faces to see because I feel like I know what this person looks like. As soon as we saw the image, I said, "This is how tall he is. This is how much he weighs. He's got bow legs. He's got lady hips." I know exactly what I'm. Like.
And she's talking about the guy on the Nest cam right now, bow-legged and lady hips. I don't know. Do you think the person on that porch cam had lady hips? I'm going to press 1 if yes and 2 if no. And again, the question is, do you think the person on the Nest cam had lady hips? Press 1 if yes, 2 if no. But also, please remember to like the video, slap your DNA on that like button, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Come say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat. And remember, super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member gives you access to the members only live streams.
Okay, I know who this person, I don't know him, but I know what this person looks like. And I think a lot of people kind of figured out, some people thought it was a woman. I don't think so. And so, keep your eyes open, and probably nothing that the sheriff hasn't already said to people. But I personally am always, kind of scanning when I go out, to be honest. At some point it will probably stop. I'll start forgetting, but for now.
Probably smart to do that, yeah.
Yeah, and anybody walking up my driveway is gonna, I'll probably put up signs, no trespassing signs.
Yeah.
Myself, so that I don't have to get into a situation where, it's a terrible thing. Is at one point in our, history over the 30 years, it'd be fine for somebody to come to your front door. And they still do here, believe it or not. I have people coming trying to sell me things to my front door.
Well, I was kind of nervous coming to your front door just because it's a walk up, and I'm like, gosh, I feel like people are on edge here. So for a guy to walk up, I'm just like,
Oh, I knew who you were.
So it seems like most people think it was not a woman with lady hips there. And I don't think it was a woman either, but I can see why some people think so, like with the eyes, and it looked like there was some kind of makeup or something. I can understand it, but I don't think it was. And that tattoo too, didn't look like a woman's tattoo either, by the way.
But no, it's, my dogs always tell me when somebody's coming up the driveway.
Yeah.
So
you have big dogs too, so.
Yeah, and I knew, I recognized you. But you can see in my house, and I can see who's coming up the driveway from over that corner and that corner. So I'm not overly worried, but I am probably a little bit more aware, because the person coming to your house, it says they're trying to sell you their truckload of asphalt, or they see that I could use the yard service, or I could use a new roof. Maybe that's not really what they're selling.
Yeah.
Maybe they just want to come up to the door and see who's here.
Just my last thing.
SD, law enforcement hasn't really specifically said. They've gone back and forth. I think at some points they said it's a targeted attack against Nancy. Before that, they've said, oh, maybe it's a robbery, ransom. But the problem with them is you can't trust them, because they contradict themselves so much, and they take what they say back. So they did say targeted attack, but they didn't say for what reason. And that's really the big thing. The big thing is also, besides it being targeted on Nancy, why? Most likely because of Savannah Guthrie, most likely to get revenge or to punish Savannah Guthrie. And maybe that's because of who her husband was. That's always a possibility too, with the Parker Glover group.
A lot of people have brought up like contractors. I guess that's a thing here, where there's just kind of I hate to say shady contractors, but some people have told me that, like there's people coming around, oh, let me clean your windows, let me look at your roof, let me,
Well, there's a lot you can see. You've probably heard some of it going on. Just right near her house, there was a new roof. Somebody got a new roof the last 2 days in the cul-de-sac over there. He moved. He's moving. He moved to San Diego. He was planning on it already. So there were people there, and I was watching because I could see from my back of my house who was up there. Over there is construction. There's always construction. Somebody's doing something to their house. They're doing an addition or doing a new roof or something, remodeling. And so there's people around. And so I had said that previously to someone that at any given point, there are a lot of vehicles around. Most of the time you see what the name of the construction company is. But there are a lot of them. And I can tell when I was standing on her street talking to a neighbor a couple weeks ago about something else, I could tell there were cars driving by, and I was just talking to her. I said, look, they don't live here. They don't live here. They don't live. I can tell who lives here because you see them around, and they have Arizona plates usually when they live here. They don't have plates from a rental car, rental company. So when trucks come around, to be honest, now I'm probably going to, if there's unmarked.
Now that's not Brian's pup. That's her pup.
Vehicles, trucks, vans, trucks, service vehicle, I'm going to be looking a little bit harder, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I hate that I have to do that, but I just, for now, feel compelled to be looking over our shoulders a little bit more, especially since the sheriff said it's targeted, we think, and everybody should be on alert, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you. Really appreciate Laura for taking the time to talk with me. And again, I'm staying in touch with everybody in the neighborhood, and I'll keep you guys posted if there's any updates. It's interesting. It's really hot today in Florida. You forget it's like a different kind of heat where I'm from in Florida versus Arizona. You kind of like sweat more here, I think, just because of the humidity, obviously. But thank you guys again for following along with me. I'll keep you guys posted on any updates that come with the case. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I left out that I learned over the last 24 hours. There's a few little nuggets I'm working on. I just need to get some second sources on. So I'll keep you posted if any of those play out. And yeah, again, appreciate you guys. And I'll talk to you guys later.
All right, now to the title of the video here. Ashley Banfield goes over 10 things that law enforcement could have done better, or just 10 mistakes in revolving the case.
That's not me saying. Hey everyone, I'm Ashley Banfield, and this is Drop Dead.
And before we begin this, make sure you subscribe to Brian Entin. I'm sure most of you are already, but support his work. And make sure you subscribe to Ashley Banfield as well. Support her too. And make sure you're subscribed to my channel too. I give my unique insights with mental health, addiction, narcissistic abuse, narcissistic family systems. And I use that insight to give my unique perspective on true crime and current events. And make sure you like this video while you're here. My video.
Serious. Thank you so much for being here. And if you're new, welcome. By the way, subscribe. It really helps. And if you haven't subscribed yet and you are not new, do it. And thank you to our members. I really appreciate you guys. So I have been thinking a lot over the weeks and weeks that we've been covering the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, about all the things that just didn't quite go right. And, who am I to talk? I'm not law enforcement, but I can tell you this. I've been around the block when it comes to crime and justice. I have been a crime reporter for decades. And so I've seen a few things, and I've seen the way investigations go, and I've seen when they screw them up. So I put together a list of all the things that happened in the last, half dozen plus weeks where I just kind of shake my head. And I know I'm not the only one. In fact, the experts have said it too. The grizzled homicide detectives who've been at this a long time also saying, what the actual F is going on in Arizona? So let me just sort of go through a couple of these, because in a moment, I'm going to talk to one of the more seasoned homicide experts and a guy who actually runs the Cold Case Foundation, still doing it for a living, so to speak, solves crimes, solves the puzzles, applies the techniques and the evidence, and follows the evidence to where it leads you. These are, kind of like Crime 101. And I can say that in this particular case of Nancy Guthrie, there are a lot of things that just, even to the untrained eye, you say like, what the? That ain't the way it's supposed to go. It doesn't happen that way on CSI and on TV, and it doesn't happen that way in reality either.
That was like her freaking Fozzie Bear waka waka waka.
Start with this. When the investigators came to process the scene, they missed a critical piece of evidence, at least one. The camera that was above the casita, the pool house. It was there. It was never collected by the initial homicide detectives. They released the scene, in like less than 48 hours, it seems, and that camera was still there. And eventually they took it. That's a mistake. Number two, they sure released that house pretty quickly, right?
And this is my number one. Releasing that crime scene so soon, I think it was 20 hours even, and then Brian Entin's assistant was able to walk up to the door. They didn't take the mat. They didn't wait for the FBI and their superior equipment. That's, to me, the biggest blunder here. I mean, that could make the difference between them getting a good DNA sample and no DNA sample. So to me, that was the number one blunder, opening up the crime scene too soon.
Again, crimes committed on February 1st, it's a Sunday. House is released on February 2nd, that's a Monday. That is real quick. And by the way, that's not me saying that. That's Sheriff Chris Nanos. Take a listen.
Monday morning quarterback, I probably would have, but I'll say this. We processed the scene. We got what we thought was complete. My team did that. I have to have all the faith and trust in their abilities and their skills, and I think they went through that pretty well. But because another agency now steps in and wants to assist, we're just like with you, we're an open book. Absolutely. How can we help? One of the things people don't see, I heard your question about, and we left and then others could walk up.
And my issue with this is, what was the hurry? What was the hurry to open up the crime scene? There was no need. What was the hurry? Why not play it safe and keep it secure for a few days? Why not wait for the FBI to get there? I mean, what was even the rush? I just don't get it. I don't get what the rush was. Do you have any thoughts, chat? I don't know. I don't know what the rush was.
Process a scene and we're done. We return that scene to in this case, the homeowners, the family. And we don't just go march back in there. We call the family again and get permissions to go back to the home. So yeah, there's, again, Monday morning quarterback, absolutely. I probably could have held off on that.
For things that are, left behind in an investigation of this magnitude, it was a shock.
And honestly, Mace makes a good point in the live chat here. The only explanation for opening up the crime scene too soon is not good. It's that Sheriff Nanos Sheriff Nanos does not like the FBI, according to former Undersheriff Rick Castiger and Union Leader Sergeant Cross. And with that being said, I bet you he wanted to be the one that solved this case. He didn't want to let the FBI come in there to his district and then come in and solve the case. No, I don't think so. I don't think he would have liked that. And some people would say, oh, you're being ridiculous, Jared. They wouldn't think like that. It's like, you don't think so? Think again. Think again when someone has as big of an ego that Sheriff Nanos does, that the people around him say he has. That's even more important. When you're operating with an ego like that, what I just said is absolutely possible. Not wanting to give the FBI credit. And that's a damn shame. It's a damn shame for Nancy, and it's a damn shame for the Guthrie family.
To me, that they never took the bracket off the front door where the Nest Cam had been affixed before it was, well, my source says smashed off the mount, and it was certainly gone. And the sheriff said it's not in their possession, so it is gone. The perpetrator took it.
It has to do with the crime scene because if you close it, you make it seem as if you have it all under control. Well, we got this under control. We got everything we needed. As opposed to waiting for the FBI to come in there and letting them do their due diligence as well. To me, it's an ego thing for Sheriff Nanos.
But the Nest Cam mount was still on the wall for days and days and days. I always said that this guy probably put a bite light into his mouth, maybe using those gloved mitts of his, and that would put saliva on his gloves, and he was manhandling that camera and the mount too. So there could be his DNA on that mount. But the mount wasn't taken, not right away anyway. It took, I think, maybe more than a week or two before they finally showed up and took the mount. So there's a bit of a misstep as well. The sheriff said early on that Nancy Guthrie was taken from her bed. And then the next day said, I didn't mean for you to take it literally, and made us all retract it and change our reporting. Only to have Savannah Guthrie put out an Instagram where she literally said the words, "My mom was taken from her bed in the dark of night." So to me, that's a big misstep too. Either it did happen and you said it and then you lied the next day, or it didn't happen, but you both said it and then you retracted it. The whole thing seems just kind of nonsensical. And I kind of trust Savannah. She's a broadcaster. She knows words matter. She's also a lawyer. And this has happened to her. I don't think she'd make it up. In any case, seems like a misstep to me. It was also a total shock to me.
Opening it early is the problem. Opening it early allows Brian Entin's assistant to walk up to the front door and leave DNA in places where the criminal would have left DNA. Opening it is the issue. Opening it too soon. Then they closed it again later. That's what they did. They opened it and then they closed it later. So to me, that's ridiculous. Keep it closed until the FBI gets there. Let them do a once over as well. Then open it once you know for sure you've gotten everything you needed.
Me that on day 2, February 2nd, the sheriff called off the search for Nancy Guthrie.
So we have shut down our search and rescue mission, and we've sent them home to rest. They were out all night. Look, we put all our air assets into this, our drone systems, our aircraft, our helicopters, heat sensors, infrared, everything we've thrown at this. They're going to step aside. We'll call them out again if we need to do more searching. But right now, we don't see this as a search mission as much as we do a crime scene. Remember, it was a search and rescue mission the first few hours, and we transitioned that over to a criminal investigation.
I remember hearing that and thinking, what the hell is going on? This woman is missing. And yes, you brought the homicide detectives in because something didn't look right in the house, but why on earth would you call off the search this soon? My God, that does not happen. Not in the crimes that I've covered, not in the missing persons cases that I've covered. Search parties are out for weeks. Elizabeth Smart had a whole industry of search parties set up in Salt Lake City for weeks. I was there for 5 weeks, and those search parties were there every single week. I'm recording this in week 6, and we haven't seen a search party. I've barely seen a search party. And shockingly, hearing the sheriff say on day 1, we're calling off the search permanently but if we need to bring searchers back on a case-by-case basis, we will. My words, but effectively that's what he was saying. I couldn't understand that for the life of me. Day 2. Mistake? Possibly. As for searchers, the Cajun Navy offered their services. Cajun Navy, well-known, Katrina, they brought together a legion of all these civilians who had assets and knowledge and capabilities, and they all went about their business, working as, as a community. And the Cajun Navy sent a representative to help search for Nancy Guthrie or for evidence or for anything. Free labor, free help, many eyes. And they were rebuffed. They were ghosted. Effectively, the guy who was sent said they just didn't respond. That might be a mistake. Free labor, good labor, smart labor. Labor's been around for 2 decades plus. The mistake I was so astounded by was the sheriff when he was asked a question by a reporter, what can you tell me about this list of names and photographs that agents have gone gun store to gun store asking if maybe these people had been in their store? And Sheriff Nano said, that's a lie. Is it? I mean, unfortunately for the sheriff, the reporters had already been to those stores, had already interviewed the owners / workers of those stores, who had already said, yes, the FBI was here and showed us a list of names and photographs, and we put them in our system. And unfortunately, we couldn't come up with anybody. So that's not a lie. Don't use those terms. They're mean and cruel and wrong. Lie. Is it a mistake, or was it that the sheriff just didn't know about it because the FBI left him out of it? I don't know, but it's a misstep for sure. Also seemed to be unaware that the FBI had gone to Savannah Guthrie's sister's home and brought their ring light and their capabilities and helped the three siblings, Savannah and her two siblings, record an outgoing message directed to the alleged perpetrator who might be holding Nancy for ransom. Remember those ransom notes in the beginning, the alleged ransom seekers? Yeah, the sheriff didn't know about it. Had to find out about it from his wife, who saw it on the news. That's a misstep as well. Or is it the FBI not bringing the sheriff in because they just didn't want the sheriff to know what they were doing, lest he say something about it that, had to be retracted. Another big shock on day 2, remember, called off the search on day 2, articulated to the community, to the world in the press conference, there's no threat to the community out there. There's no boogeyman out there. You don't have a cause to be concerned. I think the exact words that he used were...
And this is another pretty big contradiction, right? Oh, in the beginning, there's nothing to be concerned about. But now in the last few days, actually, we think the guy can strike again. It's like, dude, when you do that, people lose faith in you. When you say one thing and then days later you say something different, people lose trust in you. They lose faith in you. And rightfully so, honestly.
No cause for alarm, no concern. Well, 40 some odd days later, he certainly has said there's a lot of cause for concern. This person's still out there. These are my words, but effectively his message: lock your doors. There is a reason to be concerned. Just because it's the Guthries doesn't mean that you're not at risk. Everybody's at risk because this guy's out there. That ain't the same as message number 1. Why on day 2 were you saying there's no cause for concern? How the hell did you know? Or what did you know? Or what information were you going on? Because that's changed 6 weeks later. There were a couple of raids, very high profile raids, lots of firepower, manpower, just the weight of the world coming down on these 2 citizens. One in RICO in the first 2 weeks, and then the other one was February 13th into February 14th in Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood. Those people were detained and cuffed, and their houses were turned upside down, and their lives were kind of shattered, and that didn't pan out. Were those mistakes? Not necessarily. Look, in cases like this, there are going to be suspects that they're going to investigate. Did they need all that firepower? I've heard 2 different versions from experts I trust. One, yes, the guy's dangerous and Nancy Guthrie could have been chained up in a basement. You don't know. 2, the other assessment was that's ridiculous. Who needed all those cars, all those agents, all those guns, all that response? The bomb.
Please remember to like the video while you're here. Likes are free. Leave your DNA on that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Someone in the chat just asked, is Ashley getting sued? Now, as when Megyn Kelly asked her cast that one day, Mark Garagos and others, they all said that there's no case. There's no case for Ashley Banfield to be sued.
Squad. I mean, I've heard it both ways from people in the business of law enforcement, so I'm not sure which way to weigh in on that. But the other thing that is big is the sheriff has made no secret that he loves the Guthrie family, that they're special to Tucson, that Savannah's a special daughter of Tucson, made good with her life, and he made those comments very early in the case. And if you know missing people cases, the vulnerable, it's crime fighting 101 that you have to investigate families first. As unpalatable as it might be, it's just the way law enforcement works. So was it right for him to be saying all these flattering things lovingly about the Guthrie family? Probably not, because they had to be a target. That's just the way he's supposed to do his job. They had to be looked at. But there's been a lot of people who've brought up the topic of favoritism. Has this sheriff favored this family while he was supposed to be investigating this family? Could be looked at as a mistake. But you know what? Time will tell when we finally find out where exactly their heads were at. Maybe some of these questions will be answered. But until then, I had somebody who helps me get through a lot of these things because he's better at this than I am. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you...
So several days ago, Megyn Kelly had mentioned that the Guthrie family, in particular Savannah, was very upset that it was said that Tommaso Cioni might be a prime suspect. Savannah was not very happy about that, and they said they looked into legal action against Ashley Banfield, which is interesting considering Savannah and Ashley were friends. I don't know if they still are, but that's what they were saying. That was the report.
Actually went to the doctor, not Googled your symptoms, not Case Foundation, and he is the host of the popular YouTube show, The Interview Room. So I called up Chris, and I had all these questions about all these missteps. So Chris, the first... I mean, listen, there have been a lot of mistakes, but the first one I want to ask you about is the fact that they missed a camera, an outdoor camera, I think on the casita or the pool house. It seemed alarming to me. And as a homicide investigator, I can't imagine what you thought.
I'm not a fan of this guy at all anymore, FYI. The guy, Mike King from Profiling Evil, is not a fan of this guy at all anymore either.
Well, Homicide 101 is if you get to a house and you canvass that house, i.e. you search it entirely, you're going to start looking for that type of evidence that's going to give you solid evidence, not circumstantial evidence, right? And video is one of those things. So if you're seeing that potentially there's a video system in the house, well, automatically you have to assume that you're going to go through that home, exterior and interior, and look for those cameras. So the fact that they,
like all the gutters, like you would think you would do a complete perimeter search for any security cameras on all buildings in the house, no?
Right, and plus you have family there, so you want to ask the family where. Tell me about the security system that your mother has. And they may or may not be aware of it, but at the same time, if they are aware of it, they're going to point you to, oh yeah, she got a camera over here, she got a camera over here, there's one on the roof.
So 3 reasons. Mike King doesn't like him because he interfered with a case and really bungled it. So Mike King stops associating with him. I don't like him because he struck my channel for playing him. And then he had people come in here and harass me for playing him. So strike 1, strike 2. I will never tell someone to support his channel. I will never tell someone to go subscribe to him. And we're never going to watch him if it wasn't for Ashley Banfield. Period.
And, you know, you just follow that chain of evidence.
Well, on the subject of cameras, I could not believe that the bracket was left behind on the front doorbell cam, the bracket that held the Nest cam, because if this guy has the bite light, he's got a light in his mouth of some kind. He had to put it in there and he had to take it out. And presumably he did that with his gloved fingers, which would tell me that when he has his mitts all over the camera and he's fussing with the foliage, he's probably touching those fingers to the bracket. And yet the bracket was left there for days until finally, I think the FBI might have shown up, put the big white tent over the front, and an hour or so later, what do you know, it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, these are the, fundamental 101s, right? I mean, giving some grace to the initial response, right? They didn't know for a fact that they were going to end up with this particular video. And, now we're hearing they may even have more, at least photographs of some sort. But that said, the fact that that camera is missing, to your point exactly, Ashley, I mean, with this idea that,
Chris, on day three, that would be Tuesday after Nancy's Sunday disappearance. On day 3, my source told me their Nest cameras, they were smashed. And what do you know? They're gone. And Michael Ruiz from Fox News said there were glass shards. He saw glass shards underneath where the Nest cam would have been. To me, on day 3, I don't know why they would not have taken the actual bracket from which these cameras were smashed. You would assume they'd have been manhandled at some point.
Yeah, and every piece of that camera is a piece of the evidence. And, if you think about that, there could be...
So the thing with it is, depending on the person, everyone else I listen to is friendly, but some people are not. So if they're not going to be, you'd have to do like only 30 seconds at a time, which really doesn't really work. So it just wouldn't go well. So like I said, they hit me for a non-copyright song, which was really the message of don't be playing me. And then the other people that were in here, I don't know, people were here. They saw it. There were several people harassing me about it while I was playing them. And then it turns out they were like, oh, this is what you get. Screw you. And I was like, okay, I've learned my lesson.
Touch DNA, there could have been, like you're talking, there could have been, fluids from maybe the suspect's mouth, et cetera. Or he could have even cut himself. I mean, we don't know that yet. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. I mean, whenever you hit glass, even with gloves on, there's a possibility that the suspect could cut himself. And many crimes have been solved like that. And maybe this is some of this, mixed DNA problem that we're hearing about, but we don't know about. This would be a perfect example of if in fact there is glass down there and it was witnessed, then they should have collected it. There's no excuse not to.
Interesting you said that, because I hadn't thought of it till now. It is a doorbell camera, which means you touch it. And so all sorts of people would have touched it. And
no, Livin, they were being a dick for no reason. And they were being antagonistic as well. No.
Maybe the mix could be from those who have rested their hand on the doorbell camera, or, put their hand over it as a joke or something. Maybe that, who knows if it's from inside the house or if the mix is from the outside, from that doorbell camera. It's something to contemplate. But, even the mat. So the shards of glass, particles of glass, however Fox News worded it, the front half moon doormat was left behind as well. To my knowledge, it's still there. I'm not sure if they ever picked it up.
Yeah, the last I heard as well, that it's still sitting on the porch there at the house. And we now saw on that video, the suspect was standing on it with both feet as he walked up to the front door. And so, that in of itself is problematic, because you could get dirt transferred. I'll give you a simple case. I mean, 30 seconds. I had a case where it was a body had been dumped out into the brush area, and we gathered the air filter from the suspect vehicle, and we sent it to a botanist, and we then took the foliage from around where the body was discovered. Long story short, we were able to match that foliage up to the particles within inside of that air filter. And so this is a kind of situation where, let's say this guy had dirt from another environment. Okay, that area is very specific to type of geographic area, but at the same time the soils are different, the environment's different. So you could have cactus from different parts of that particular region. Well, who's to say it, he didn't transfer something from the bottom of his shoe onto that mat? You may not get DNA, but you may get, some type of dirt of some sort.
I've covered cases like that.
Livin, that is not necessarily the rules.
Chris, honest to God, I've covered cases where in court you learn that mud that's on the tread of the killer.
Fair use allows for longer than 30 seconds.
Shoes ends up getting transferred to a location where it shouldn't be. And so I've seen it multiple times. Soil that's not supposed to be there is there, and it only comes from this particular area. So I still can't understand why they would have left the mat behind. But once again, that's why we're doing this list of mistakes. The other thing is that the search for Nancy was called off on by Monday. Don't even know what time, but by Monday, which isn't even 48 hours later, they stopped searching for her. Why would they do that?
That is a great question. They first got in there and, they handled it like a missing woman, right? That was almost like a walk away, for lack of a better term, is what we would call it. And so it was a check the welfare kind of thing. And
But then
so
they saw the
immediately,
blood. Then they saw the blood and called the homicide division, like very, very quickly.
right. And that's a huge mistake in terms of shutting it down at that moment, because it's at that point you really want to expand your resources. You don't want to, pull them in. Okay? And I was surprised they didn't put more cadaver dogs into the area, even with, you can put booties on those dogs.
And if it's only 30 seconds, everyone who plays other people's content plays longer than 30 seconds. So this is why I say support Ashley Banfield, support Tony Bruschi, support Brian Entin, support Joe Pags, support Law and Crime Network. All of them, A+.
Because I can tell you that these dogs missed, certain things at certain times. And sometimes, depends on the wind, right? If the wind's blowing a certain way, a dog may not pick the scent up right away. So I don't know if they've gone back over there to run, cadaver dogs. But here we are, this far down the road, you would think that they should do that.
Day 40 plus, week 7-ish. I mean, depending on when our viewers are watching this. The other thing that the sheriff said very early on was, I believe it might have been day 2, he said to a member of the media that Mrs. Guthrie was taken from her bed in the middle of the night. And that was published, I believe, in the New York Times. I could be wrong there, but it was published. And then the sheriff came out later and was angry about that, saying, well, I didn't think you take me literally. And everybody retracted all this reporting that she was taken from her bed, only to find several weeks later, Savannah Guthrie using those exact same words when she gave her Instagram account speaking, my mother was taken from her bed in the dark of night. And so I just can't for the life of me understand, A, why someone would say it if they didn't want it out there, B, why they would retract it if it's true.
Yeah, that's a great point, Ashley. I mean, the communication here to the public is to be gentle, is alarming. Because if in fact she was taken to the bed, from the bed, and that's what he did say, well,
Lewis, don't ever come back.
Well, then that tells us specifically about the mentality of this perpetrator. And it takes him to a different level. The fact that we may have 2 photographs, from 2 separate nights, one with a gun, one without a gun. Is this 1 or 2 people? We don't know that piece of the puzzle, but we know one of them has a gun. And so that means this.
And also, by the way, I've had a bad day. So if people are going to try to fuck with me today, the band hammer is going to be quick. So Lewis, so long.
Person entered that house with the ability to use deadly force. And it also means there's a 84-year-old woman asleep, probably, high probability, in her own bedroom in that house. Now that tells us a whole bunch of information about the mindset of the suspect and the familiarity of that mindset to that home.
Well, it just made me question. I understand why investigators hold back information. It's not lost on me. We get it. But if you're looking for a kind of perpetrator, certainly the public, more advised on who they're looking for, might be able to think, my friend Jake is kind of like that. They might be looking, they might be more attuned to zero in who it is that the police are looking for if they know there's a certain predilection among their friends. And so it's the kind of information, if you've already sent it out there, Sheriff, why on earth would you retract it if it's true? Because it actually might help spur more tips.
Yeah, there comes a point in investigations where you have to determine whether or not putting information into the public will help the investigation or hurt it. In this particular case, I think at this juncture, look at the type of leads that were generated just by putting the video out there. Okay. And that came through Kash Patel. Remember, he hit it up on in social media. Well, that generated a whole new enthusiasm for the investigation, for lack of a better term.
40,000
And so,
last count, Chris.
right. And that's right. That's the point. That's the reason. And so when you have a sheriff who's talking out of both sides of his mouth, one day it's, yeah, I said this. Well, I didn't mean to say that. Well, perhaps I said that. It's a confusing messaging to the public. And the messaging, to the public should be very clear, concise, precise, because you're.
So what the sheriff should have done is had a clear plan for people. If you don't want to share much, that's fine. That's totally fine. No one's entitled to the information, right? Just make sure you're consistent and then you don't contradict yourself. You don't want to have to keep on backpedaling and then contradicting what you've previously said. If they just would have had a better strategy with the public, then a lot of people wouldn't have this negative opinion of him, I think. And also, of course, if we didn't open the crime scene too soon, that would have helped too.
There are other senior citizens out there in that area that are on edge. And you have to make sure that if you have information that tells you, look, you're okay, you're going to be okay because we have a direction we're headed. And this is the reason why. You don't have to say all of the reasons, but you also have to lower that fear and that temperature to the community. That's your obligation as a law enforcement.
You're speaking my language. In a minute, I'm going to get to that because Sheriff Nanos said on day 2, there's no concern here. He actually said there's no case, there's no cause for alarm. There's no concern. But that directly conflicts with what he said this week. I'm getting to that in a moment. But I want to just specifically say the words that Sheriff Nanos used. Back early in the case, these are the words that Sheriff Nanos used. He initially told NBC News, quote, "When you're taken from your bed and you don't want to go somewhere, that's an abduction."
And again, I don't know if Sheriff Nanos is being literal with that. And it's hard to say. You mean literally out of her bed or just the fact that she was taken from the home? You're calling that figuratively out of your bed. It's hard to say, right? But if you're the sheriff, you should probably be more literal because in a case like this, people are going to take you literally. So make sure you act accordingly. That's what I would say. But while you're here, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat.
But then the sheriff's department said that Nanos, quote, meant that figuratively and did not mean that she was literally taken from her bed. That's what the department then said and clarified to NBC.
Yeah, does it get any clearer than that? Right?
Clear as mud. Clear as mud.
That's right. Exactly. And so it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. What do you know that tells us she didn't want to go? Number one. Okay. You can't tell the public that, oh, by the way, we know she didn't want to go out, leave that house. Okay. Well, how do you know that? Do you have other information inside the house? And if you say that, or if you do, then you need to tell the public. The reason I made that statement is because we have other evidence that we're holding close to the chest that gives us clear and concise information about that being the point. And this is, I think, where maybe this burglary thought process comes up. Because, early on, he said, well, this could have been a burglary gone wrong. Well, anybody who enters a building with the intent to commit a theft or a felony is a burglar, okay, under the law, okay? But if you're 84 years old and you're sound asleep.
So by the technical definition of a burglar, you could say it. But when we're talking about burglary on this channel, we mean the taking of goods, the taking of items. That's not what the purpose of this was. To me, the purpose of it was punishment/revenge on Savannah Guthrie. You come during the day, you're there for goods. You come at nighttime, you are there for the person. That's what I think it was.
And there's a guy circling your house, and there's all this other stuff that's been going on. Guess what? He's not there to commit a burglary. He's there to commit a major felony, evident of the fact that she's missing out of that house. Okay? And so when you put those pieces of the puzzle together, and then you start telling the public, look, I'm not really sure what we have. It could be a burglary. It could be this. I'm not sure. Well, your job is to be sure. Trust me, I've been doing this, since 1982, and I work some of the highest profile, cases in this country. I did the little boy in Southern California that was murdered in the bathroom, and there were 18 satellite trucks when I walked out of that bathroom. I did Leticia Hernandez, who was kidnapped December 16th, 1989, which is the only little girl that's ever been profiled 3 times on America's Most Wanted. I have done a lot of high-profile cases. If the miscommunication is screwed up, then parents will worry about where their children were. In this case, you have senior citizens going, am I safe, Sheriff? And he's getting mixed messages out there. He needs to get off of the podium and let his PIO do their job.
Well, and check the facts too. Okay,
Check the
I wanna
facts.
go through the list a little bit more. The sheriff released the scene Monday. That was the day after that this happened, and then later admitted, well, maybe I did that too soon, and said the words, "I believe that's on me."
And by the way, you're not going to hear me say anything else bad about the IR or him. I don't want to engage in a smear campaign. I'll just say what happened, and then I don't plan on ever bringing it up again. The only reason why it's even happening now is because he's on Ashley Banfield.
Right. Homicide 101. Do we have everything here? Yeah. Okay. Let's triple check to make sure we have everything here. Okay. Done. Now, that means if you are going to search that house and you have a warrant to do it from a judge, okay, then you hold it as long as you need it. If you need more time, you go back to the judge and you put your hand up and say, Your Honor, we're not done. We're still processing. We're still gaining more information as this comes down. The irony of that was when the FBI did finally come in, when he let their evidence team comes in, remember he says, well, they need to do their thing too. What the heck does that mean? They need to put their own, barrier tape up to keep the public out, and now they need to do their own thing. What that in of itself was confusing. I'll tell you what.
I'm mindful of that though, Chris, because I've seen a lot of crimes that they start small and then they're resolved and there's no need to sort of scale it to the FBI. And on day 2, apparently the FBI was involved. So that's actually a good timeline to hear that they were involved. But then to hear that on day 2, you're releasing the scene, I feel like it shouldn't be released until Mrs. Guthrie's back home, not we've double and triple checked our evidence to see if we got what we need.
I mean, to me, there's no harm in keeping it closed and then having the FBI come in and do like a double take. There would have been no harm in doing that. I don't know why they did it that way. To me, the ego thing, just them wanting to make it seem like they had it under control. It's not to say that they wanted the FBI to go home, just that they wanted to make it maybe seem like, yeah, we got it under control. It seems like a silly juvenile reason, but even in the adult world, there are certainly silly and juvenile reasons for things.
Right. There's what they call rollback warrants, right? Where you can, you all of a sudden discover something that the investigation tells you. Okay, either a witness or, video or whatever. Okay. The MAT is a good example of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so you can go back to the judge or you can go to the family and get consent, and the family can say, oh yeah, of course, go get that piece of evidence. We want that. Okay. The courts look at that and juries look at that and go, oh, well, they didn't see it the first time. That makes sense. Okay. But juries are not real friendly when it comes to, hey, we've got the homicide guys here the very first night, okay, or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. We've got our evidence team here, and guess what? We've released the scene. And then all of a sudden they see, hey, I got to go back 3 or 4 more times to this house because we keep, learning more things. And that's when a court will come in and say, well, why don't you just shut the thing down and hold it? Okay. And you have a crime scene log and you have a person with that crime scene log that dates and times everybody coming in and everybody going out. Okay. Because if that's not done, a defense attorney is going to jump on that. And it's called fruit of the poisonous tree. All of that evidence that they collected, that they did, quote, diligently collect, okay, is going to get suppressed in pretrial hearings. And one thing that shocked me that the sheriff had said, he said, well, we'll let the courts handle that stuff. Remember, he was asked.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
that. Who does that?
Well, he does. Who does this? Who does this? On, like I said earlier, on day 2, which is Monday following the Sunday abduction, the sheriff says there's no cause for alarm in terms of if there's a concern to the community. He's asked if there's a fear, a boogeyman out there. He says there's no cause for alarm, no concern. And then on week 6, he says, we believe we know why he did this, meaning the suspect. We believe we know why he did this. I think from day 1, we had strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished. And then he said,
and that's the question for you, chat. What do you think those strong beliefs were? What do you think the strong beliefs were that they had since day 1? Open-ended question.
You do need to be concerned out there. Lock your doors, etc. What the hell changed? If you believed what you believed from day 1, why are you telling us to lock our doors now? But on day 2, you were saying no cause for alarm, no concern. That's a hell of a mistake if you ask me.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that the sheriff is saying we believe we know why he did it, well, that's a singular. That's not they. We believe why they did this. Okay. And so that tells the public, hey, there is that person out there that they may know who that person is. Okay. And apparently it sounds like they knew who that person was on day 1. Okay. And so then the next question then to the public is, well, what about all this ransom note then? Was that just noise? Right? Did they know?
And personally, I don't think any of the ransom notes were real at all. I think they were all just opportunistic exploiters. They were trying to take advantage of a situation. I don't think any of them were legit. I mean, chat, do you think any of them were legit? I don't think so. I mean, press 1 if you think any of them were legit, but press 2 if, like me, you think they were not. So 1, you think any of the ransom notes were legit. 2, no, you don't think so.
They know where she was taken to? Did they have some type of information in there like that? The sheriff needs to clarify what this messaging is, and he can't do it in bits and pieces. I mean, it's almost like he's thinking in bits and pieces. He's not, coherently telling the public, look, here's what's going on, and here's the reason why. And quite frankly, he should not be the mouthpiece for this investigation. It needs to go back to a lower, like a sergeant or a lieutenant who is working with the task force. Somebody from the task force should be the mouthpiece to the media and to the public.
It looks like one of the rare unanimous votes. Everyone thinks the ransom notes were not legit like I do. And I agree, chat. I agree.
The sheriff needs to sit in his office, get debriefed on a daily basis about what's going on. And it's the task force commander who says, okay, Chuck, you're the public information officer. Here's what we want to tell the public today. This is the progress we're making. You hold that data.
And by the way, also, I would have liked to seen Sheriff Nanos hand over the case to the FBI early on, mostly because, the FBI has a bigger budget, better equipment, more experienced members. Why not at that point do that? And then when they do that, it would be the FBI giving these press conferences, if there are any. Or even if Sheriff Nanos doesn't want to turn it over, have an FBI rep up there and him. So you can at least get both. I think that would have been more clear, but they didn't do it.
Daily briefing, 10 a.m. for professionals like yourself and others. You get everybody in the same room at the same time, asking the same questions, and they all get the same answer. Okay, but not this guy.
This episode is sponsored by RICO. And with spring finally here, I've been trying to get outside a lot more. to hear him say, we believe we know why he did this. I think from day one, we had strong beliefs about what happened, and those beliefs haven't diminished. And so day 2, there's no cause for alarm in the community. Day 40 or day 30, day 41, I think he's putting, or day 40, he's putting out, there is a cause for concern. Lock your doors. This is a danger to the community. And like you said, there's an entire alleged ransom piece to all of this that the FBI is working, right? They're going into Savannah Guthrie's home and helping to record these messages to the so-called alleged ransom seekers. And the sheriff didn't know anything about it. He learned about it from his wife. I mean, to me, this is a colossal sort of failing, not knowing that something this big was happening, just down the street.
Well, it's a perfect example of your ego goes to the door before your experience. You can be, you can say you've had 40 something years or 50 years, but there's nothing that can replace experience. And, I have a lot of experience, but I've made mistakes like the next person. But at the same time, I let the people that are in the lane run and do their job. And administrators, the sheriff is an administrator. His job is to protect the community and to run the department. It's not to run investigations. That is the homicide team.
Chris, is it a mistake of the FBI to not inform the sheriff that
So the thing about that, Bella, is in order for the FBI to take over the case, yes, the Guthrie family would have needed to make a request to do so. So the fact that they didn't make that request, you can take that as you will. Maybe they were hesitant to go against their local law enforcement, but the Guthrie family could have. They could have done that, but they didn't. Why they didn't? Your guess is as good as mine.
they were going in and recording for the very first time an outgoing message from the family to these alleged ransom seekers? Is that a mistake of the FBI, or do you think it's the FBI specifically holding it back because they're worried about what the sheriff was going to say?
Well, I think it could be twofold, right? Behind the scenes, there's political jockeying going on, as well as in front, you've got the field agents and you've got the sheriffs who are working side by side. And quite frankly, they're probably doing an amazing job. Those guys, it's always the people behind you that are, lockstep into, who's going to get to the podium first. Okay. I mean, just look at how some of the information got released. You have the director of the FBI send in a text message out, okay, or a tweet out on Twitter about the video and the photographs, okay? And now you have the sheriff coming over and going, hey, well, we didn't know about that. We didn't know about the ransom letters and that the family was going to read that stuff. So it was almost like a tennis match, right? Okay, well, you're going to do that. Fine, we'll do this. And finally, they realized that the public wasn't going to stand for it. And I think the pushback from the public was, you guys need to get on board here together and leave this other stuff to the side, because there's an 84-year-old woman out there who's been missing, and you need to, put your aspirations off to the side terms of politically. This is a really interesting phenomenon happening.
So one of my fellow chatters said there's a massive storm by me right now. So got to pray that power doesn't get lost here, because then we'd be disconnected.
Where politicians are stepping up to the podium to run investigations. Okay, their job is not to run investigations. In fact, in my opinion, anytime you see a politician step up to the podium, it's a problem. Okay, it's a problem. And because that's telling you they're also behind the scenes trying to tell the investigators what to do and how to do it. Okay, and I'll tell you, that's a recipe for disaster. It really is.
To that end, the sheriff in this case really from day one spoke so highly of the Guthrie family. And for anybody out there who's, doesn't work in investigations, it sounds nice, right? Oh, this, poor family's been victimized. And he's saying how, she's almost like Toussaint's first daughter. Savannah's so special to our community. Nancy's special to our community. All of that sounds nice, but isn't it their job to kind of be the bad guy in an investigation? As unpleasant as it is, the statistics usually point to families, and you've got to investigate from the very middle outward in the concentric circles. So should he be making those kinds of overtures to a family that he's bound by law to investigate?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. And there is no favoritism when it comes to potential homicide. Our job as investigators, and I work for the Cold Case Foundation, is to follow the evidence. Wherever the evidence takes you, there is no, there's no favoritism in that evidence. Okay. And so if the evidence took them to a car, and then that car took them to a house, and that house took them to their phones, which in this case, you have all of that taking place. And then maybe other evidence took them back to the house, to the garage at 10 o'clock at night and photographed it. Okay. Well, then tell the public why. Why did you do that? Because that in of itself is not doing the family any favors in any way, shape, or form, because it was all done, in the evening, most of it, except for when the ICAC guys showed up with the UFED to go into the home. Why are they ringing the doorbells of all the neighbors of the family members to ask them about the family members? That is homicide 101.
But also photographing inside their home in the dark of night. I think
Right.
That's something that led a lot of people to say, what's going on here? These are supposedly the victims. The sheriff has spoken so lovingly of this family. Then why are you over there, intruding on their home? Is it a mistake?
Why are they coming out of the house with bags?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. And I don't want to suggest for a moment.
No, I get it.
People have wrongly accused me of
I get it.
floating theories. And what I have done is I have only reported what my sources have said. And that was that they are looking at a family.
And Bella, yeah, I heard that Savannah Guthrie called Mark Kelly, the senator. I mean, I bet you she just found out her mother was missing and she wanted the inside scoop right away. So she's like, okay, who can I talk to? So she probably had a better relationship with the senator than maybe the governor, perhaps. So she called the person that she had the best relationship with, that had the most amount of power. Maybe she didn't feel comfortable calling Sheriff Nanos, but that's my impression of what happened.
Family member. And so I'm just so curious about why the sheriff would speak so lovingly of a family that he's clearly investigating. So publicly he's saying to us, these people could be victims and ease up, and it's reckless to say these things. But yet he's photographing their home. He's towed the car. He's asking neighbors. He's searching around their homes, taking video from gas stations nearby. Again, I don't know if it's a mistake or if it's just somebody who's just not ready for prime time. I'm not sure.
Well, you have to ask yourself, right? We have to step back and you're right. We're not accusing anybody. We're just watching what the sheriff is doing. I mean, let's just be clear with the public, right? We're seeing the same things that, quite frankly, the family's seeing, because, the family's going, why are you towing my car? Okay. Oh, well, and he had to give them a reason. Okay.
And he had a warrant. He had a warrant for it.
And he had a warrant. So he had to give a judge a reason. Somebody had to get a judge to say, okay, I see what you're looking for. Here you go.
By the way, as an investigator, just tell the audience, is it probable cause in a circumstance when someone goes missing to ask a judge, I want a warrant for a family member's vehicle because they're family and we always look at family? Is that enough of probable cause, or do you have to have a lot more than that?
No, you just can't, you just can't tell a judge, oh, well, because, okay, because they're family, okay. Now, you could...
Not just that, but, statistically speaking, that's always where police begin. They begin with those who are closest to the vulnerable when they go missing. But is that's not enough, that doesn't reach the bar of probable cause?
No, did you see them impound Ed Smart's car?
I was there and I don't recall. It's been a while, but I don't recall seeing that.
They didn't impound his car. Okay. I mean, just look at how many kidnap cases, okay, where a family member has been kidnapped and the law enforcement agency goes in and says, okay, everybody's car is impounded. Okay. No, you can't do that. Okay. Now, what they probably worked off of is the fact that.
And again, Annie just got her car back. Luke Daly got his car back way before that. We had heard Luke Daly still had his phone. I think even Carlos still had his phone there too. That's really the only other thing I'm looking forward to is that tower dump. But that's really it.
That was the last proof of life in a vehicle that was brought over to that house. Okay. So, of course, a judge would say, okay, she's 84 years old, disappeared from her house. Your Honor, she was brought over by a family member. Okay, fine. We want to search that car. No problem. Here you go. I think that's enough for you to get that vehicle. Okay. And so, but remember, there's a 10-day return on that search warrant. You get 10 days, okay, by law.
I didn't know it was 10 days.
Oh, yeah, you get 10 days by law to go through the evidence or find the evidence, and then you got to bring that receipt back to the judge unless you ask for an extension. Okay? But then you've got to go back and you've got to give a judge a reason why you need an extension. Okay? The judge just isn't going to say, hey, you get to keep fishing for as long as you want. No, that's not how the Constitution works, right? Under the Fourth Amendment, and the Fifth, if somebody says, yeah, you can have
in your search and seizure.
Right. And the fifth is you can't just keep asking them questions about it. Okay. At some point, the judge is going to say, look, you're asking them too many incriminating questions. That's a violation. And you're searching too long, et cetera, et cetera. And all that math starts to be put together. But in this particular case, when they were done, they didn't just give the car back. So something is just not lining up.
They've also told us for 2 weeks. I believe they told you and they told Brian Entin a week later, we're in the process of returning the car. And then a week later, the same statement, we're in the process of returning the car. But it is odd. And I look at that as a mistake only because if you're clearing these people, my God, clear them and give them their vehicle back and don't let journalists like us question, well, what the hell is going on then? Because you gave Luke Daly his car back within that 10 days. That was the silver Range Rover in raid number 2 on February 13th. He got his vehicle back within 2 weeks. I don't know if they ever took Carlos Palazuelo's vehicle. He was the DoorDash driver who was in southern Arizona when they raided him. But that leads me to another issue. 2 big raids with huge firepower, just, massive response, multi-agency response that yielded nothing. And we never really learned what was the lead and was it really a strong lead? Do you see that as a mistake or do you see those raids as, hey, that's the way this works?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that particular piece of this investigation is a mistake because they may have some type of digital footprint that led them to that, particular individual. And, remember, if this person carried a phone into that area where Miss Guthrie lives, then technology today is going to pick up on that. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go through and they're going to identify, hey, wait a minute, we've got this, particular ping. It's connected to, this type of problem. I.e. a person or a house or whatever. And then they're going to get a search warrant and they're going to go hit that house just to make sure. And what did we find out? I mean, the guy says, hey, I do deliveries and yeah, I could have been over in that area. So, they had to vet him. They had to do that. And it's the same thing with the other circumstance. Now, in that circumstance, though, the Range Rover,
By the way, please remember to like the video. Leave your DNA on that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Super chats are a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super stickers, great way to support the channel. And becoming a channel member gets you access to the members only live streams. They are a good time. Say hello to the flock of black sheep here in the live chat too. Got a great group of people.
We're talking about that one. The fact that they took that as a piece of evidence and they put evidence tapes, remember, on the back hatch. You saw the FBI writing his ID number and the date and time. That's for the chain of custody. Okay, so that piece of evidence now goes on an evidence list, and that car is towed to a processing evidence facility, and of course it's processed. Well, they didn't find anything, because at some point they turned around and they said, okay, you can have your car back, okay? i.e., we can't hold this indefinitely. Now, if they would have found blood or, something that would have been, connected to Miss Guthrie, then you can bet that car it would still be sitting in their evidence facility, because now that evidence becomes exculpatory to whoever they arrest for the defense. The defense now has an opportunity to go look at it themselves. They just can't release it, okay? And that would have to come through a court order. So in that case, they let the gentleman's car go.
But let me ask you about the other issue and I look at this as a big mistake. A reporter came into Sheriff Nanos's office and asked him about authorities going door to door to gun stores with a list of names and photographs and asking the proprietors of the gun store or the workers there, have you seen any of these people? And can you run them through your system and tell us if they've purchased anything? And we saw interviews with these people in this gun store saying, unfortunately, I just didn't get I'm sad I didn't get a hit. I wanted to help, but no, we couldn't help. That reporter asked Sheriff Nanos about that, and Sheriff Nanos said, that's a lie, as though it didn't happen, when clearly it had happened. We witnessed it. And I wondered if it's, again, the FBI didn't tell him they were doing that, and there's Sheriff Nanos telling a reporter it's a lie.
Well, again, right, we go back to allowing the task force to control the communication, because that's the exact type of statements that it turns out, in fact, it was true. And the sheriff took a position and just kind of shot from the hip. And in this.
And you expect better from Sheriff Nanos, right? Mike, thank you for the super chat here. Unfortunately, a lot of these senior experts don't see what's really going on. Too set in their old ways. This is a new form of fear and terrorism. Interesting. So, Mike, I would ask you, what do you think they have wrong? I'll be curious to hear your thoughts on that. And thank you very much for the super chat.
Kind of high profile case, you do not shoot from the hip at all. You had better know how to get to the top of the mountain, because people don't get to the top of the mountain by falling there. Okay. And in this case, he keeps falling on the top of the mountain and doesn't realize he's going to get the momentum, and he keeps rolling to the bottom of the mountain. But what he's doing is he's strengthening the defense against Miss Guthrie. He's not strengthening the investigation for her, for the state.
And that part I agree with. I think all his contradictions helps the defense. Like when Sheriff Nanos says, oh, the family and spouses are cleared. Well, if there ever comes a point when one of the family or spouses is charged, you better believe a defense lawyer is going to say, hey, they said we were cleared. Sheriff Nanos said it, right? Now, granted, it happens before, right? People have been quote unquote cleared and then charged later, right? That does happen too. But it's certainly something that the defense would try to use. Doesn't mean it would work, but they would try.
Or for the U.S. Attorney's Office in any way, shape, or form. Because you can bet a guy like Mark Garagos, let's just use Mark for an example, right? High-profile lawyer out of L.A., awesome guy, okay? He's going to grill you on the stand. Trust me, I've been grilled, okay, like the next guy. But that's their job. And when you get off of that stand, and the sheriff will be that guy getting off the stand, he's going to want those statements back. He's going to want them all back, because they're going to put the FBI guy on, to counter his comment and say, hey, didn't you in fact, go to these gun stores with all these photos? Yes, we did. And why did you do that? And he's going to give the answer. Yeah. And then they're going to put the sheriff on and say, well, you didn't know about that, did you? Well, I didn't know about it at the time. What else didn't you know about? And they're going to
No.
look at the jury.
There's a million reasons, right? That what you're just laying out being the most important. Secondly, you want to have faith what your public officials, are saying is trustworthy. That's hard to deal with now, given how many inconsistencies there have been. But also, don't tell people they're liars. Don't. Just don't. It's a really harsh criticism, and I've had this from the.
So yeah, liars, and he said cruel. That's pretty much gaslighting, right? To do your job and to speculate, that's not cruel. To say definitely this person's guilty, they should be arrested now, we know it, that is more cruel, especially if there's no evidence. But what Ashley did, no. She's just going off of what her source said.
Sheriff, I'm not a liar, but he said some things I believe were directed to me. And I just don't think it's appropriate. If you're working on something and you need to keep it quiet. But don't start throwing arrows, slinging arrows at those who are doing our jobs. Last one real quickly, and that is the Cajun Navy. We've come to know the Cajun Navy over years and years, since Hurricane Katrina, at least for me. And I think they was actually the genesis of the Cajun Navy was Hurricane Katrina. And it's just a loose group of individual civilians who sometimes have boats or have dogs or have some kind of savvy about how to search and do rescue, etc. And they sent a representative to ask the sheriff, can we come and help? Can we bring our resources to bear in this case? And was ghosted. I mean, wasn't even given the respect of being told no thank you, just was ignored. And I just wonder, how often does that happen where law enforcement, I hate to say looks a gift horse in the mouth, but in this case, I feel like it really is, because there's no searching going on. And we just found, tan pants in a wash behind Annie Guthrie's home and a knee brace that I guess wasn't collected.
Yeah, that whenever these kind of things happen initially, right, you just don't know what you have initially. So, I think the sheriff's department and their search and rescue, they sent all the resources that they felt that they could have sent, right? But then, to your point, you get to a place where you go, okay, can it hurt the investigation? And the answer is no. When you're looking at an 84-year-old woman, however, it does have to be controlled by somebody in the department, meaning you need to have a liaison that's saying, okay, folks.
Let's see here. Thank you very much for this, Mike. Until they realized they were out of country in 1 hour. That is very likely, honestly. I mean, if I did it, that's probably where I would go. So I agree. I'd be bolting for the border because it's just going to be easier. Everything's going to be easier there. In America, there's going to be a million eyeballs on you. Down there, not so much. Thank you, Mike.
This is the grid that we're going to search. We need you to get out there, okay? And then you walk them through it. If you find something, don't touch it. Just, put a flag on it. Notify us. We'll come out. We'll collect it. We'll photograph it. We'll measure it. We used to call it bag and tag, right? Just don't touch it. Now, if you have an experienced group of searchers, my understanding is there's a lot of former LE, there's a lot of former military folks in this organization. You know what? Why not use them? Okay? Get them on the ground, let them get dirty. They may know something that we don't know. Okay? And I guess that's the key. Law enforcement, we don't always have the answers. Okay. And that's why you put information out to the public and say, look, have you seen this guy on this video? Okay. That's not law enforcement solving this crime. That's the public picking up the phone and saying, yeah, this is, so-and-so, such and such. And the reason I know that is I saw that clothing before he put it on when he was getting in his car, hypothetically, of course. Right. But that's how cases get solved. And if you're resistant to that in your community, guess what? You're not serving your community. Okay. You are, telling your community what to do. And that's not service. Law enforcement there needs to be a paradigm shift there. And that sheriff should be the very first one that should admit it and say, hey, maybe this is a resource. I made another mistake. We should pull them in.
Many eyes make light work, and crowdsourcing has certainly helped to
Absolutely.
solve crimes. Gabby Petito, for one.
Yeah.
Chris McDonough, thank you so much. It's a long list. I
Thank
appreciate you
you.
helping me get through it.
All right. So make sure you check out Ashley Banfield's channel, support her work. Now we're going to go take a look at the video from years ago. Little character analysis of Sheriff Nanos. So 9 years ago, and Sheriff Nanos almost looks exactly the same 9 years ago.
So, Sheriff, I first just want to ask you, I mean, what do you know about a possible investigation into your department?
Well, I probably know what you know because you read it in the paper, and that's how I know about it.
So this is about the FBI investigation into his department. So let's see how he handles this. We know former Undersheriff Rick Hastiger said he did not like this one bit, and this is where his resentment and dislike of the FBI came from. But let's check this out. And this was a good suggestion by Mace in the comments, if you're still here.
You know, I think back in November, Ms. Schmidt had talked to us and done an investigative report on our cafeteria. She reported a number of flaws in our procurement process that we hope to have corrected. We're still working on some things, permits at the jail, those types of things. This was all done prior to me getting here, but we recognize that, yeah, we've made some missteps and we're taking care of that. When it comes to an FBI investigation, I was taken back by that as much as anybody. Here's an agency who, for years, has been known to deny or acknowledge or anything about any kind of investigation. They're famous for that. And yet,
a deflection and belittling of the FBI. But also, before we continue, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. I go live 5 to 6 nights a week, a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern, to talk about true crime and current events. And remember, Super Chat's a great way to support the channel and get questions answered. Super Stickers, great way to support the channel. Becoming a member also supports the channel and gives you access to the members-only live streams.
they confirm Miss Caitlin's sources to her, I'm told. And that I'm told by Miss Kate Schmidt, that she called me a couple of days ago and said, hey, what do you know about this FBI investigation? I says, well, why are you asking me about an FBI investigation? You should be asking them. It's their investigation. And she says, well, I did. I said, well, what did they tell you? She says, well, they confirmed what my sources have told me. I said, well, that's nice.
So have you been interviewed by the FBI?
Absolutely not. No. Andy Black from their director for Tucson office talked to me in December. And at that time, the conversation was so benign, he led me to believe there wasn't an investigation. In fact, it was more along the lines of fatherly advice about things that had nothing to do with this. It was almost a bizarre conversation I had with him, but never anything about an investigation. And then in January, I got word from one of my employees who said the FBI interviewed me. And so that's when I called Mr. Black out, the director here, and said, what's up, Andy? Are you doing an investigation or not? And now he tells me, well, it's just a preliminary investigation. So I don't know what the difference between a preliminary and criminal. You'd have to ask the FBI. But I know that once Caitlin called me, I spoke to the FBI and I let them know pretty much how unhappy I was for the you know, I think I told you, Ms. Schmidt should be on the FBI's payroll. She's done a better job investigating this case than the FBI has. The FBI's had it for 90, since November, 90 days. And they've interviewed 3 employees. They've not asked for any records. Ms. Schmidt's asked for all of our financial records. We gladly gave them to her. We cooperated fully with it. We recognized our missteps. Was there a violation of some obscure law, as others have said, some procurement law? It's a civil process where we messed up on a.
So what's he doing here? minimizing what they did, a classic narcissistic tactic.
Procurement issue where we didn't have those with disability get first shot at a contract. Yep, we probably did. We admit to that. Our mistake. Was there disability vending machines already placed here? Absolutely. We already had them. They were here. They've been offered the jail. They've even since then been offered here, and they still turned it down. So all of those things, those questions that were produced by Ms. Schmidt, to me, we've resolved. In terms of the FBI investigation of RICO funds, well, that's just crazy. We have access, absolutely, and Mr. Black knows this.
So it's about RICO funds.
We have no access to RICO funds, never have. It goes through the county attorneys. When you want RICO dollars, and oh, by the way, we don't buy binoculars. And when I came in office, I said, enough of that. We've got enough stuff. So we bought some tasers. Okay, good. It's appropriate expense for RICO. But I have to look at our RICO dollars and go, it should be put back into this community where it really has an impact on crime, on substance abuse and things of that nature. So we look at those nonprofits who and I actually showed up at the door of Youth on Their Own because I heard about them. And I showed up at their door and said, why aren't you guys applying? This is a great organization who does some great things with our kids. Kids who are on the street homeless or taken away by the courts, have nowhere to go, and they make them stay in school. 97% success rate. That's who I'd rather see my RICO dollars go to. Programs like Amastatus, LULAC, Youth on Their Own, YWCA, several of them. We've given, since I've been in office, over $150,000 to those types of programs. But they're programs that are designed to help our kids stay out of jail.
So your department has never used RICO dollars for either of these cafes?
No, not to my knowledge at all. We thought we had. I think that when in her article, she mentioned that Captain James, who was new at the time as a...
Did you hear that? No, not to my knowledge. We thought we had. You hear that?
Down there, mentioned to her that the refrigerators were purchased with RICO dollars and that there was some $20,000 purchase. Well, the refrigerator was $4,000, and we thought, as he did, that it was RICO dollars. We checked with our downtown procurement office, who, oh, by the way, also oversees our purchases. Then they said, no, it was general fund money. Okay, so he misspoke. Oh, we're hiding something very nefarious of us. See, we did this cafeteria thing based on nothing more than a desire to help our staff. That's all it was. Trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, not worrying about doing things right.
Look at this guy. This is hysterical. I could read a whole narcissistic breakdown on this video. But it's like, oh, we are justified in doing whatever we did that may not have been above board because it was for a good cause. And spoiler alert, this is what many people say when they've gotten their hand caught in the cookie jar. It was for a good reason. I was a Robin Hood or something.
Right, black and white. Okay, I get it. Sometimes we have to do that just for appearance, but this office has always been transparent, always. We have given Caitlin every document she's asked. She even asked for documents that when we gave them to her, she said, why did I want this? I don't know, Caitlin, but you asked for it, so we're going to give it to you. We would give you everything you want, any document you want, all of those. The FBI hasn't come by and asked for any of those documents. They've not asked for, hey, can we see your procurement policies and procedures? Could we see your RICO policies and procedures? Could we see your expenditures for RICO? Could we see your expenditures for procurement? You see that? But yet they've had it for 3 months and interviewed 3 employees. You know, I really am, if I'm upset at anybody, I'm upset at the FBI. You confirm something that you never confirm. I understand the paper said, Ms. Schmidt put in her article that they didn't confirm it, but I know she told me they did. So I'm guessing that she probably got confirmation off the record. Well, that's inappropriate too. No matter what the story is, the FBI to me has better things to do. If they don't, then come out and...
Isn't that a common one too, right? Rather than hold me accountable for what my law enforcement officials have done, don't you have better things to be doing? Now, granted, sometimes you can say that's accurate, but it's also still a way to avoid accountability. Let's not get it twisted here too, right? So an example of it being accurate would be, it's like when the police, they come after like some minuscule thing. What's an example of a minuscule thing? I don't know, speeding. They like spend so much time on a speeder. Meanwhile, there's massive real corruption around, whereas like, okay, shouldn't someone be focusing on this too? But granted, it's still a way to try to avoid accountability, even if you're right.
And ask us what you can do. 2 weeks ago, we had their corruptions unit call my internal affairs and say, we're slow. There's nothing going on. Do you have anything for us? Well, if I'm managing a case that I think is that critical and important, where I'm involving a law enforcement agency, one of the largest ones under my jurisdiction, I think that's pretty critical. I think that's pretty important. And I would turn to my staff and say, and I do, because we investigate cases for other agencies, and I say, it's important to them. So you get it done and do it completely, thoroughly, and oh, by the way, timely. 90 days, 3 interviews of employees who, for all I know, are just upset at for some reason, but nothing more. No request for records, no request for financial stuff, no talk to the sheriff, nothing. So yeah, am I upset at the FBI? Absolutely. They should. They get by with saying no comment. Who does that in today's world? Who does that? Yet they get by with that. And when this thing's all resolved and the case is all over, I challenge them. I challenge Mr. Black to stand up to that camera by himself and say, we have looked at this investigation and we have exonerated, completely find this investigation to be total BS, because that's what it is.
So I guess the interesting thing to note would be, how did this finish? What was the final verdict? See if we can find that out, chat.
But you won't hear that because they won't confirm or deny.
So did you reach out? You might have mentioned this, but did you reach out to them after this story was published?
I reached out to them. What is today's Friday? No, Caitlin told me she was writing the story. In fact, I told Caitlin I want her to write the story. I want her to quote me that I think the FBI, if they are having problems doing criminal investigations, please call us because we have real policemen here. We'll do that for you, because obviously they can't get it done.
So you're upset that they went, and confirmed this to the news agency.
Absolutely.
So remember, this is the backdrop. So fast forward 9 years later, not Nancy Guthrie disappears. This is the backdrop though. So he's like, I don't like the FBI. I don't really want them to get a big score in this case. I don't want them to be the ones that found the DNA in the home. We'll open it back up because we handled it. We got it. You can be here because you're here, but we want to get the Vada boys for this, not you guys. And again, people would say that's ridiculous for a law enforcement officer to be like that. And I would say, yes, it is. But it doesn't mean it's not true, right? People with egos can be absolutely ridiculous.
Coming to you.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I'm upset at that, and I'm upset at the inappropriateness of their investigative efforts. And they are inappropriate.
So, as far as you're concerned, do you think the department has done anything wrong?
No. Do we make some mistakes here? Absolutely. Was there anybody here making money and had this criminal intent and nefarious? No. Was some of the better decisions to say, okay, this is Chief Radke's family niece, probably we should look somewhere else? Probably so. But those weren't my decisions. Those were Sheriff Dupnick's decisions. And Chief Radke assured him at that time, I'm out of it. I think the truth behind that was simply this. We had a contract employee here. The contract employee here was working and we got EEO complaints. We dismissed them. We dismissed that contractor. So we turned around and said, how do we get it filled? It's not easy to get somebody in here because you have to, first of all, have a background. But when Chris said, I could get my niece, she does a catering service, she'll come in here and charge us nothing. I thought, well, we don't want any money for it. I didn't want to make money on the deal. I just wanted to give my employees something cheap, a decent meal. You see where we're at. You got 20 minutes to get to a restaurant and back and have your food done. Some places it's not possible. The jail, particularly, they're locked in. I have corrections officers who are locked in a pod, and the only chance they have is maybe 15 minutes to run downstairs and grab something out of the cafeteria, and back up they go. They're not going anywhere for food. So we've shut that operation down. I get it. We're going to go through the right processes. It's just the way things are set up. We don't always like that, but that's what it is. There are rules out there. There's bureaucracy out there. I understand it. I shake my head and go, aye, but we still get it done. And we're going to do that in this case. The cafe was nothing more than an opportunity to help our staff out. Somebody got this wild idea that, oh, somebody's done something wrong here. This is nepotism. You know, we hire hundreds of people here who are fathers, sons, mothers, wives, husbands, all over the department. There was nothing here. In fact, Chief Radke said in the article, I excused myself from the process once that happened. But then they said, well, he was overseeing it all. He's the captain of that division. Why? And there was an email showing that he had contact. Well, the email was, after Caitlin found out this, he sent that email up saying, hey, I washed my hands of it. Well, of course he's going to wash his hands of it because he's overseeing it. He has to. If he was over our criminal investigations division, he could care less. He wouldn't even have to exclude himself for it. He recognized that he was over that area and he couldn't be partaking in it. So it was then given to now my chief of staff, Brad Gagnapane, or Carl Woolridge to handle. Byron Gwaltney, my chief at the jail, handled all the jail procurements. It was just...
And that's the right word for this. Some of this is word salad here, where these answers don't need to be that long, but he's giving you a whole book. It can kind of get confusing. You can lose focus a little bit, and you're like, what's the original question again? Were you talking about what? But word salad is usually a tactic to deflect, avoid accountability, confuse people. That's what it is. And my favorite definition is when you say a whole lot of words, but say absolutely nothing. That is word salad.
A matter of getting things done for our staff. There was nobody here doing something nefarious, and apparently somebody thinks otherwise. Okay, well then investigate it.
So I think you said, as far as you know, it's just a preliminary investigation, but I mean, I assume the department is going to work with the FBI if they do want to.
Well, we've always worked with them. But you know what? I asked them yesterday, or was it yesterday? Yesterday or the day before? I said yesterday. I wanted heck with this preliminary investigation. Why are you doing a preliminary investigation? I want the FBI to send this case, take it away from the director here. He's already showed his bias. He is biased on this case. He's already done that. He's shown it. And I'd like them to take it away from here, send it to Phoenix, send it to Washington, D.C., and start a full-blown investigation. I don't want a preliminary. I want a full-blown investigation. Show me where we violated the law, FBI.
And if you did anything wrong or you committed...
Absolutely. I've got all my RICO stats right here, waiting to give them to you. Come and get them. Here they are. They've been here forever. You can see how the process is. He knows very well what the process is. Somebody asks for dollars. Amastatus, youth on their own. YWCA, can I have monies? We do this. Well, yeah, sure. I can't reach into my pockets. I don't have that access. Well, you have to fill out some forms, and they have to qualify by state law what those statutes are. Or did I say state law? Oh, that's right. The feds are now investigating state crimes? I don't know. But so we look at the RICO statutes. We give that application they fill out. Do they qualify? We're not making that decision. We send it to the county attorney. Oh, by the way, guess who has access to the funds? Not us, not the county attorney.
The whole thing seems a little weird here, right? Where there must have been some sort of smoke, because why else would the FBI investigate this period? There had to have been more smoke than what he's letting on here, because, yeah, why would they? Why would they unless there was something going on?
County treasurer. So the funds go to, the process goes to the county attorney's office. They either approve it or deny it. If it's approved, they send all the money here. No. They send the request over to the county treasurer and say, these funds have been approved for release to this group. We get notice and we send a letter to the group saying, you've been approved. And a check is cut from the county treasurer's office to that group. But it is a process that is monitored and handled by the county attorney. And if we're doing it through the state attorney generals, the state attorney general. If we had federal RICO dollars, we would use the feds for that, because it's a process we've used all the time. And we have every year, we have given reports to the Department of Justice. This is no example of all of our RICO expenditures. FBI has access to that. So why haven't they looked at that? 90 days, and they've done 3 interviews. If I had a homicide case and I did 3 interviews in 90 days, we do 3 interviews in 30 minutes. Last night we had a homicide case we were working, and we had 3 interviews in less than a half an hour. They took 90 days to do 3 interviews on a case that they believe is important. Well, if it's so important, why aren't you on it? Get this thing.
So by the way, this is a interview from 9 years ago about the FBI investigating him for, I guess, the misuse of RICO funds, a RICO funds case. And clearly, Sheriff Nonis is not happy that this investigation is occurring. So why are we playing this? Well, some content and context into Sheriff Nanos's character, ego, narcissistic, I think. Some of the narcissistic tactics we're seeing him use, deflection, minimization, word salad. And then to also lay the groundwork for thinking, how would this guy work with the FBI 9 years later? Considering Union Leader Cross and former Undersheriff Rick Hastiger said, oh yeah, Sheriff Nanos, he really holds a grudge. He's vindictive. So how would that guy treat the FBI in 2026? Would it be the kind of guy that opens up the crime scene too soon to not give the FBI a chance to look around and see what they can do? I would say, yeah, probably. I mean, do you think Sheriff Nanos would do that just to spite the FBI? Press 1 if yes, and 2 if no. I think yes.
Resolved for me. Don't sit there and let it linger and linger and linger so that they just can conveniently do what they want. No, I'm not very happy with the FBI. We've worked with the FBI for my career the entire time here. Had a good working relationship, 30, 40 years. Great working relationship. They've been assigned to this office. We've had staff assigned to that office. And in a 30, 90 days time, we have a new director over there who's screwed up that entire relationship as far as I'm concerned. I have no trust in his ability to manage that case or that office.
So going back to the process for RICO dollars, so hypothetically, if your department wanted to use that money to, say, buy something for a cafeteria, you would have to go through that entire process.
Absolutely.
Right? And I assume the county attorney would probably not approve that.
Well, if it was approvable, yes, they would. I don't know. Can we buy equipment for, I need a taser. Can I buy it? We've done it. It's been approved. The law is that you have to be able to show that it meets your mission.
Which is crime fighting.
Crime fighting, yes.
So you wouldn't be able to just take money from that?
No, I can't. I guess I could buy a car for a patrolman or I could, typically it deals with crime, drugs, rehab.
I mean, him opening up the crime scene too soon isn't about him sabotaging the case. I think it's more about him just wanting to make sure the local law enforcement gets the credit. That's what I think it is about. Because if they go in there and maybe they do things and they find things that local law enforcement couldn't find, that makes local law enforcement look bad. And I don't think Sheriff Nanos would like that. So he just wanted to be able to get the credit. He didn't want them to get the one up. And it's not to say he wanted to sabotage the case. I think he absolutely wanted to solve it. I think he wanted the credit. That's what I think. He didn't want the FBI to get the credit.
Maybe I've got some, or education, but no.
But you'd have to submit an application.
Absolutely. No matter what.
Okay.
I buy a pen. I can't buy that pen until I ask the county attorney. And don't take my word, contact Barbara Wall's office and say, Barbara, how does the RICO process work for you? How do these agencies, because it's not just this agency, all agencies under the county attorney's auspice send their money to her. She's fun. I seize dollars. That dollar is immediately, within 24 hours, deposited into the bank at the county's treasurer's office. That is now there. We get a court order to either, one, release it back to who we took it from, or two, it's yours. You can use it for law enforcement purposes. Once that's happened, that court order goes over to the county treasurer. They know what to do with the funds. The county attorney gets a copy of it. Our finance gets a copy of it. Now we know we have X dollars in our account. Somebody comes and asks for it. We have 3 or 4 page form. They have to fill it out. We get that form. We send it to the county attorney's office. They look at the form and says, this doesn't meet it. Sorry. I think we've been denied 4 or 5 times, a handful of times for the most part. There's a lot of nonprofits out there who do good things, but they don't necessarily impact the community in its crime fighting or its reduction of crime. I ask that they focus on helping youth. If you can show me that you're helping the youth of our community, then you can show me. I can draw that nexus. I think and if I'm wrong, then somebody will tell me. But I think that if I've got young kids out here who aren't graduating high school and they 7 times more likely, 70% chance they're going to be in my jail in a day or two, I think I can show that if you're getting these kids through high school and you're taking care of them and you're meeting their needs, I think you can qualify. I'd rather see it go there than I need another set of handcuffs. Come on. This is money we've taken from people in the drug world. We have tax dollars available to buy uniforms, to buy cars, to buy weapons, to deal with those things, to furnish offices. We also have money available to us to help the community. Why wouldn't we do that?
So do you plan to reach out to the FBI again, or are you want them to contact
I left it up to him. Last I talked to him, I told him what my concerns were about his objectivity in this case, and that I wanted him to take it to DC and remove himself from it. He said he would call me back. That was yesterday morning. Okay. I've not heard back.
All right. Well, anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Did we talk about everything?
Yeah.
No, that's it. Let's see if there was a follow-up for this.
Allegations of money laundering and obstruction of justice.
KGUN 9 has learned of serious questions about the possible misuse of money in the Pima County Sheriff's Department. That's hundreds of thousands of RICO funds that should only be used to fight crime, but instead might be illegally used for other things.
Now, your side investigative reporter Valerie Cavazos joins us now with the exclusive.
So this is interesting. The backdrop of the backdrop. Money that should only be used to fighting crime, but was used for other things. And this is what Nanos was talking about.
Details, Val.
Sheriff Chris Nanos confirms the FBI is still investigating its investigation into possible misuse of RICO funds and told KGUN 9 the FBI scheduled a second interview with one of his senior command staff this week.
The FBI began investigating claims that RICO money possibly bankrolled a remodel cafe for staff operated by Chief Deputy Chris Ratke's niece.
But while we get into this, please remember to like the video. Likes are free. I think we're dangerously low on likes, by the way. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and come say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat here.
An allegation Nanos denies.
Nothing was done wrong with RICO monies or appropriation of funds in terms of any criminal activity. Were there mistakes made in the procurement process? Yes, there were, and I've corrected those.
But Dr. Richard Carmona, former U.S. Surgeon General and longtime deputy chief in the Sheriff's Department until earlier this year, believes the possible misuse of RICO money extends beyond the cafe controversy. Carmona says he's been interviewed by the FBI, and over the past year, he spoke with many officers and civilians who were also called in to talk to agents.
I said, well, what'd they ask you? And it was interesting that the pattern of questioning was the same with all of these people. And it was all about 3 people. Brad Gagnapane, Chris Radke, Chris Nanos.
Brad Gagnapane, the former chief of staff, Chris Radke, the chief deputy, and Sheriff Chris Nanos. Carmona says last year, while sitting in a meeting with senior command and staff, they began discussing the annual awards banquet.
This is going to be very expensive. It's going to cost $30,000 or $40,000. We don't have any money. And I was looking, I said, well, let's reach out to some of the businessmen in town. Let's do this. Nanos says, Brad's got it handled. You don't need to worry about it.
At the time,
Is this what Nanos made it sound like? It sounds like he just said, we got it handled. We got the funds for this banquet. You guys don't need to worry about it. Sounds like to me this is where the investigation came from, right?
Carmona didn't know that RICO money played a part.
Well, the awards banquet is held by us, and we would use RICO dollars, which is appropriate.
Is it?
By law.
An awards banquet is appropriate.
Well, let me explain to you. By law, Barbara, there isn't one penny of RICO dollars we've ever spent or will spend without going through the process of the county attorney's review and saying whether or not it's lawful or not. I'll tell you right now, do I like that idea? No, not really. But you can buy an award for one of your deputy or staff using RICO dollars.
That's true. RICO funds can cover the awards, but not food and entertainment. Kagan 9 obtained ledgers dating back to 2009 and
the old half-truth. The half-truth of RICO funds can cover an award, but not the other parts of the banquet, food and entertainment. Another one of the narcissistic people's favorite tactics, half-truth.
2010, showing tens of thousands of dollars in RICO funds
and lies of omission, of course, too.
Moved from the general fund to the Sheriff's Auxiliary Volunteers Account, or SAV. The list of purchased items include tuxedos, flowers, furniture, and entertainment equipment.
Basically, what this is showing is that it was common practice for the awards dinners to be paid for through the SAV funds and with the help of the RICO funds.
RICO funds and individual funds were put into the SAV accounts under an account that dealt with the awards banquet.
The ledger shows a RICO deposit of $35,000 in September of 2010, labeled Special Awards Fund. Several sources have told 9 on Your Side that this practice of allegedly using RICO funds in ways they shouldn't be, from at least 2009, have continued for several years after that, including this year. Nanos told KGUN 9 the FBI has interviewed a staff member from the finance department.
And we started hearing from the financial officers saying that there was illegal activity with the RICO funds. You can't use them that way.
Remember, FBI agents were asking questions about Chief of Staff Brad Gagnapane. 3 months ago, Gagnapane was found dead, shot outside a neighbor's house. The county medical examiner's office ruled it to be a suicide. The sheriff's report shows the neighbor called 911. Sheriff Nanos and Deputy Chris Radke showed up at the scene. Within hours, Carmona began receiving calls that
That is interesting. So that other guy ended his own life.
Processes and procedures were not followed based on what the deputies and detectives at the scene said.
Interesting indeed. I'm glad we're going through this backstory here. Oh. Butterfly Girl, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate your support and all of your comments in the live chat here. Thank you very much. Please, everyone else, remember to like the video. Likes are free, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already.
I can't believe 1 minute that anybody called Carmona. I can't believe that. But maybe I'm wrong.
In the sheriff's report, on the night of the suicide, the neighbor said Gagnapane had been arguing and texting his wife on his cell phone, but detectives were not allowed to interview her, a key witness. Only Nanos and Radke spoke to her, but there isn't a report from either one. One detective reports he was not allowed to look for a suicide note in Gagnapane's house, and a supervisor told a detective they would not be going to the autopsy, which sources say is normal procedure.
Were the detectives allowed to go to the autopsy?
I don't know why they wouldn't be. I don't know. Let me ask this. I don't know why they would go. It's a suicide.
And the public, I think, rightfully needed to know that because his suicide was coincident with him finding out that he was part of the FBI investigation.
The shame is this is a guy who spent.
Seems a little bit dramatic, perhaps, to end your life over the RICO funds, but maybe. Maybe plus a little depression, plus maybe some alcoholism. I don't know that to be a fact at all. I'm just speculating. But, combination of a few things pushes you over the edge. I could see that.
30 plus years of his life serving this community.
So the question
And
is
they're
then
going to
why?
trash him. And they're going to trash him. Shame on them.
Then why?
Shame on them.
Then why did he commit
Because it's-
suicide?
Well, I don't know his demons.
Was he questioned by the FBI? Was he a
Don't know that.
primary person
You'll have to
in the
ask-
FBI investigation?
No. I don't believe that at all. I don't know it, but I don't believe it at all.
The possible obstruction of justice issue deals with whether normal law enforcement procedures were followed before the medical examiner made his determination of suicide involving the death.
So, let's put it to you this way. Doesn't sound like Nanos is talking like an innocent man there. He's talking like someone who's a little bit guilty and who's trying to deflect, avoid accountability, minimize, all sorts of things, right? That's what it sounds like.
Of former Chief of Staff Brad Gagnon. Now, I asked Sheriff Nanos if I could interview Deputy Chief Chris Radke, and he told me no. Now, according to Nanos, the FBI investigation is nearing its end, and we might know more in the coming days. Back to you.
All right. And Mace.
Allegations of money laundering and
Mace brought that video to my attention, and I thought that was a good thing to go over. I think it's important to do the background. H.G. Tudor, whenever he does a background to determine whether he thinks someone's a narcissist or not, that's what he does. He goes back into their past and he examines everything. So, I'm not saying that Nanos is that, but it doesn't really matter for our purposes. What matters for our purposes is what are his behaviors and how would those behaviors influence the Nancy Guthrie case? That's what matters. So one of them is dead, the guy who ended his own life. Nanos is there. And then the one guy Melissa said was guilty, was found guilty. So did that mean he went to prison for a couple years, Melissa? We can look that up real quick. Pima County detective found guilty. Deborah, welcome. Now, no suspect for the Nancy Guthrie case yet. Yeah, Melissa, if you're still here, did you see the sentence? Did you find out what that person got sentenced as? I'm looking it up now. There we are. Former sheriff's detective charged with theft-related felonies. Former Pima County Sheriff's Detective David Tarnow has been charged with multiple theft-related felonies and is accused of the theft and sale of items from the department's evidence inventory and local pawn shops. That seems to be a different case. Most certainly, SD, you got to certainly keep that in mind. Because that's the thing. Once you find someone's a liar, it does make you pause and you have to look at what they say differently. You just do. Good night, Song Bits. Let's see here. Chris Nano's coworker. I wish Melissa was still here because she's the one who said the guy was guilty. There you are. Looking, he was found and indicted by grand jury. I believe that's who ended his own life. Interesting. That would make sense, though. I mean, I don't think he'd be going to jail for life, but it's certainly a smear on his reputation, right? He'd probably go to jail for some years. And he was like, you know what? Screw that. Yes, Esley, it's in a lot of these departments, it can be like the wild, wild west, honestly. The magic wand, of course. The reminder that the little things in life matter. And if you can't do the little things right, you're not going to be able to do the big things right. That's what they're for. Carlos got returned. He was never arrested. He was detained. And that was it. Yes, underdog, that's why we went over that. To see if that would influence how he sees the case today and working with the FBI today. And I would say, yes, it almost certainly does. Because former Undersheriff Castiger was saying, yeah, he hates the FBI. He's very vindictive and holds a grudge. And that's why. But Nanos is probably wrong in that case, right? They're just guilty. And they caught him. And the other guy who ended his own life was the fall guy. Not a good night on likes there, George, huh? Right, Danielle? We might have to talk about something else tomorrow night. What day is this today? Monday? So Tuesday, we might have to talk about something else. You might have to talk about the Corey Richins verdict or something. Because I think the Nancy Guthrie case is winding down here slowly but surely until they find something. No, they did not, Heather. No. Oh. Cat would like music. Problem with the Epstein files is YouTube doesn't like the Epstein files. Well, and that's the other thing, right? People talking about Iran and that whole thing. There's so many things going on. It's just hard to keep up. Think about it like this. 30 years ago, there's been one of these stories would have been news for a long time. But in 2026, there's so many new stories, you just can't keep up with them. And I'm talking political now, by the way. And I saw Ashley Banfield talking about that too, Dana. That's a good call as well. Yes, everyone should check out Sable on Blonde's channel. She does some great covers over there. There's a few people that come in here that have their own channels. I think Tim maybe has his own channel. That one girl, Melly, has her own channel. She's not here right now. AAA Laura has her own channel. Yes, Mace, they did. Well, because there's just nothing new. There's nothing new, and they can't stay out there. I mean, Brian is beholden to News Nation, I think. And News Nation would say, hey, you got to get back to work on other things. You did a great job for us for 42 days, but now you got to go. And as far as JLR goes, I mean, he'd be there as long as there's like views and I guess, or new cases, or new things going on, but there wasn't. They ran out. So I don't blame him for leaving either. That's a good question, Deborah. I don't know how they feel. Slap that like is right, Jensky. Everyone that's still here, 820 only. Oh my goodness, under 1,000. We'll be slipping. We're slipping over here. But there should at least be 814 likes. Yes, Mike, most people do. I've learned you can't. I talk about gray area political topics, but not all the way in. Because if you go all the way in, you get forced as a creator, you get forced into a category. And you just can't be you. You'll get forced into a category, and then you'll get judged by who's around you. So you just can't. They make it very difficult. Yes, Brian lives in Florida. I have not heard anything else about that, Cap. That would be interesting to explore, though. And the kid was 11. And that's an interesting case, right? That's maybe something to go over with Salerno, actually. Because that's a nature and nurture case, right? The 11-year-old kid that was autistic. Now, what caused it? Was there something like genetic part of autism? Or is there something a little bit darker going on there? Do you think it's possible he can be rehabilitated? So let me know, chat, if you want me to talk about that 11-year-old case with Salerno. That would be an interesting thing to go over. Speaking of Iran, I don't know what your gas prices are over there, but today my son got gas, it was almost $6. Holy mackerel. Where are you, Christy? Ours isn't that bad yet. This Thursday, the normal time, he's on Pacific time, so for him, it's 7 p.m., but for me, it'd be 10. And we're going to do a talk. We might go over some of the case, like one case, to keep the true crime element going. But then we'll also just talk about narcissism, and if people have questions, they can like super chat questions in or whatever. Should be interesting. $6 a gallon. That's outrageous. Well, that's what we get. The Strait of Hormuz is closed. What went over your head there, Danielle? Gang, gang, they say. Shoo. I have to check. I think mine's still in the 3s, not over 4. I'll have to look into that one, Cap. I don't know what's going on with that one either. I've been so Nancy Guthrie'd up. I have not paid as much attention to the other cases. I've seen the 11-year-old kid. Of course, I've seen Corey Richens. I've seen the one that we went over a few days ago with the kids from South Carolina. But a lot of these cases, they're just like a one-shot thing. I see Law and Crime Network go over it once, and then they don't talk about it again. But we'll see. We'll see how we handle it. I don't know. The Dima Tower case is also crazy. I don't know what you're referring to, Animal. It's a good question there, Hyper. I'm not exactly sure their plan. Denise, it's my magic wand in my ear. Of course, it's a reminder to myself and others that the little things in life matter. If you can't do the little things right, you won't be able to do the big things right. It's also a reminder to keep a little bit of magic in each day. Sheesh. That's a lot, Crob. No, cat is not Animal, of course, but Animal was talking about something about mobs and whatever. Maybe Alaska? Nah, probably not Alaska. No, the UK. Are you talking leaders? You guys do leaders. Kat can confirm or deny. Danielle from hell. Danielle, are you familiar with Tim Dillon is going to hell? There's always something out there, Melissa. I'll figure it out. The Dima Tower case. Is that recent, Kat? Because recent is preferable. Recently sent to prison. Okay. That might be good enough. Tim, the Dr. Salerno stream is this Thursday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. It'll be the first one we've done live for a while. I've done a bunch of recorded ones. The missing general intrigues me, Hyper Kimberly says. We'll have to take a look at that one. I like Tim Dillon, Danielle. He's changed a little bit, but I liked old school Tim Dillon the best. We'll be looking for you, Tim. Tim, did you say you have a channel too? You say you got 1,000 subscribers today? Or were you referring to something else? Yeah, it should be interesting, Melissa. $2,500 deductible. That's pretty expensive. Oh, okay. Never mind. Never mind then, Tim. Autumn Dickinson. See, Kat, getting a lot of subscribers from here, which is good. 369. Not that good, though, George. Poor. But tomorrow's another day, and we'll do better tomorrow. I saw Dr. K talking about AI psychosis SD. That would be something to go over. I agree. Well, Danielle, we're probably about to wrap it up here in a minute. The missing Jenna was only 8 hours from Tucson in Albuquerque. Interesting. World Baseball Classic. Yeah, the baseball fans might not be here. Well, it depends on what time it is too, Tim, right? Cat AI psychosis is this new thing where people they're relying too much on AI. And what Dr. K says is everyone thinks it's not going to be them, but it's sneaky. We can play it a little bit right now, perhaps.
I'm becoming increasingly concerned that AI use may be a legitimate cause or risk factor for psychosis, mental illness, suicidality, and potentially homicidality. So I'm not saying this to try to be alarmist. This is not sort of a clickbait kind of video, but this is a genuine concern that I have. We are starting to see evidence that AI use may be very, very similar to like excessive substance use and the induction of things like homicidality, suicidality, and psychosis. And the reason for that is because there's a new case study that is incredibly scary. This is the case of a 26-year-old woman who has no history of psychosis or mania, is actively in mental health treatment, who uses an AI chatbot very extensively, becomes actively psychotic, becomes hospitalized, then gets given antipsychotic medication, stop using the AI chatbot when she's in the hospital, and then the psychosis resolves. And then she leaves the hospital, stops the antipsychotic medication, starts her regular psych meds, starts using AI chatbot again, and then becomes psychotic again and has to be hospitalized again.
So the scary part is the people that don't have a history of psychosis or bipolar. That's what everyone used to think, right? Oh, it's only going to hurt the people that are susceptible. But this new study saying, no, it's not just the people that are susceptible. It could be anyone. And that's the pause for concern.
So I want y'all to understand something, okay? So when we look at mental illness, there are some people who are mentally ill, and then that is a risk factor for various kinds of behaviors like homicidal ideation, which is the desire to kill someone. And then as we treat that mental illness, hopefully that homicidal ideation goes down. But then there's another category of people for whom these features of psychosis, suicidality, and homicidality, these are the three most like basically dangerous things in mental illness, can actually be induced by stuff, right? So when I was working in the emergency room at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, there was a big problem with something called K2 use. So K2 is synthetic marijuana. And basically people would use synthetic marijuana and then like they would come in, they would be psychotic, they would attack people. Sometimes they were suicidal. And when the K2 goes away, right, when they like sober up, those symptoms tend to resolve. And I'm beginning to think, I know this is like insane, but I'm beginning to really wonder and be concerned about AI use affecting our brains like a drug, in the sense that when we use AI a lot, it can actually induce psychosis. And then like when we stop using it, those things go away. And here's what a lot of, people who are in leadership in AI companies will basically make this argument, right? So they've said this very publicly that, oh, like it's a tragedy that these things happen, right? That there are some vulnerable people who, when they use AI, will like become psychotic. So there's this sort of idea, right? That like AI doesn't cause this. It's like if I smoke a bunch of meth and I become psychotic, like that's the meth causing the psychosis. Does that make sense? No one's thinking like, oh my God, like AI is causing the psychosis, like causing it. So I think this case report is incredibly scary because it really shows a causal or temporal connection between extensive AI use, the induction of psychosis. When AI stops and we give the appropriate medication, psychosis goes away. And then if you stop taking the medication and start using the AI bot again, or when she did, it causes a hospitalization again. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, once again, like this person has risk factors, right? So we'll have some of these public statements by AI leadership that like, oh yeah, there's a vulnerable population and these tragedies happen in a vulnerable population when they use the AI. It's not the AI causing it. It's that these people are really close to the edge of the cliff. And when they use AI, they get tipped over. But here's what really scares me about that statement. I want y'all to think critically for a moment about what information do you need to make the statement, vulnerable people who use AI, that's when psychosis happens, right? Like it's not that AI causes it. There's a pre-existing set of vulnerable people. In this case, in the case of the 26-year-old, she did have certain risk factors for mental illness. She, I think, had a diagnosis of depression, had ADHD, was using stimulants. So all of these things can potentially be risk factors for psychosis, but she had no history of these things, okay? So I want y'all to think for a moment about what information you need to have in order to make the statement, vulnerable people who use AI can sometimes uncover pre-existing psychosis, and it's a tragedy.
Hey y'all, if you're interested in applying some of the principles that we share to actually create change in your life, check out Dr. K's Guide to Mental Health.
There are actually two sources for anxiety. One is cognitive and one is physiologic. For the majority of
measuring psychiatric risk factors for all of their users, because unless you are measuring who has risk factors and who doesn't have risk factors, how can you make the statement that people who are vulnerable are the ones that AI is inducing psychosis in, right? So you can't make that statement unless you're measuring that stuff. And that brings up two other concerns that I have. The first is, are they measuring it? Because that's kind of insane, right? Are they like measuring your risk factors? Are they collecting your medical history in some way? I don't think so. And so if they're not collecting that, how do they know that only the vulnerable people are the people who are at risk? And the second thing about that statement, right?
A fair question. If they're not measuring it already or have your information, how do they know it's only the vulnerable at risk?
So vulnerable people who use AI can become psychotic, suicidal, homicidal, whatever. if you sort of say that. Then the second piece of information that you need to be able to say that is to be measuring those outcomes in that population. If I were to say this risk factor leads to this outcome, I can only make that statement. And if I say that the thing in the middle, the AI is actually safe, the only way I can make that statement is to do a study where like I have people with risk factors, people without risk factors, give them both AI and then see how the outcome is different. So once again, are AI companies measuring psychosis? Are they measuring suicidal ideation? Are they measuring homicidal ideation? And the answer is hopefully not, like sort of, right? Because that means they're collecting health information on their users, which I don't think is part of what they're supposed to be doing. People are making these statements.
Now, if you're an OG here, a cat has seen this. I've ridiculed some Dr. K videos in the past. I've disagreed with him. Even though he is a licensed professional, I did disagree with him about borderline and narcissism. In some ways, not always, but some.
In AI leadership without actually having the sufficient information to make those statements, which then creates another problem, which is like, how do they know that AI is safe? How do they know that AI does not induce suicidality, homicidality, psychosis, depression, unhealthy attachment styles, social isolation? How do they know what the safety effects of AI are? Are they just reading the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and stuff like that? Or basically leadership at AI companies, are they reading media reports or are they doing research? And then this is what's really scary is like, are they basing their statements based on the few cases that enter the media? And so this problem seems to be like growing quite a bit. And what really scares me is if they're using media articles.
I mean, and down the line, and maybe sooner than we think, there's going to be some issues with AI. It's just a matter of what they are. We're starting to see it already. Some people are having AI girlfriends and boyfriends. That's already happening. That's not good, I don't think. And but it's substituting, right? It's substituting for a real human connection. Because there's a lot of people that are isolated and lonely.
How do they know that there are not people who are quietly delusional, quietly psychotic, who are not killing anyone yet, or not committing suicide or things like that? Like, how do they know that their product is actually safe? And here's the other thing that really scares me. What do you have to do if you're running an AI company? What do you have to do to know that your product is safe? So here's what I've seen as someone who has worked with entrepreneurs, who has worked with startup founders. When a company who has a product is faced with solving all of this stuff that is outside of their product, right? They're an AI company. They are not equipped, do not have the bandwidth or the funding to actually do randomized controlled trials on the safety of their product. They're not regulated by the FDA, right? This is what's so interesting about AI companies is even though they have profound mental health impacts, they are not formally in the system for evaluation for mental health impacts. So when I work with founders like this and they are faced with this problem, I'm just imagining, like, put yourself in the shoes of someone who is an AI founder, who suddenly people are like, just think about this, how fucking insane this is. You open up the New York Times and you're like, oh shit, some guy who used my AI committed murder, killed their mother, was delusional, and then committed suicide. And you're like, well, fuck. How am I supposed to solve that problem? When you are faced with problems that are unsolvable or feel unsolvable, the best cope you can do is to do some mental gymnastics, throw your hands up and say, it's actually not my problem. This is not the problem that exists. It's way simpler than that. The simple matter is that there are some people who tragically are vulnerable to begin with. It's not my product that does it, right? It's not my product. Like, cigarettes don't cause cancer. Like, that's insane, right? So there are doctors who talk about the health benefits of cigarettes and how they make you stimulated and they're like good for your health and they give you a sense of energy and like, let's go. It's not my product, not my problem. Cigarettes are not a medical device, right? So I don't need to do studies on them or things like that. There's no like, oh, coincidentally, people who are high risk, sometimes they get cancer. And it sort of makes sense, right? Because if you're someone who's like an AI CEO, maybe you're a coder, you look at this medical problem and you don't know how to solve it, right? You don't know how to put together a clinical trial. You don't have the money to put together a clinical trial. So what do? You do this interesting, very basic human sort of thing. I'm not saying that any of these AI CEOs are specifically doing this. I'm saying this is my past experience working with an entrepreneur. When you're faced with a problem that you have no idea how to solve, that could result in findings that make it hard for your company to make money. Like, oh my God, high dose of AI induces psychosis and suicidality. My business model is to get people to use my product more. We want people smoking more, right? And so when you're faced with that problem, you kind of throw up your hands in the air and you kind of say, look, this is not my area.
And don't get it twisted. That is ChatGPT's and Claude's mission, to keep you using their platforms. That's why when you use ChatGPT, it always say, hey, Jared, would you like me to do this for you? Would you like me to look up that for you? Would you like me to make this into a video? And by the way, I hate AI videos, so you'll never see me do them. But ChatGPT tries to get me to do them, and I'd say no. Or do you want me to do this? No. So you have to know the goal of it is to keep you using it.
Expertise. Sometimes shit happens to people. People are psychologically vulnerable. And I'm not talking specifically about OpenAI, but I think like in some ways, I think OpenAI is doing a really good job. So they released this great blog post where they're sort of talking about taking this pretty seriously. I know a lot of users are actually complaining about the most recent version of ChatGPT because it's not as manipulatable. It's not as sycophantic, right? So I'm not saying that these people are bad. The reason I'm making this video is because there is a small chance or large chance, that's up to you. We've presented a lot of different evidence. You can watch this other video, that if you are using AI, it's dangerous to you. I'm not here to shit on AI CEOs or AI companies. The reason I'm a psychiatrist, and this platform is about your health. The reason I'm making this video is because I want y'all to understand that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, hopefully we'll have a clear answer that AI is dangerous, safe, whatever. But the problem is, in the meantime, you need to be careful.
True. That's true. But that was his most recent AI video. He did one a few months ago, too. We'll see. We'll see if we go over that. But anyway, that's really all I had for tonight. Got to do some more homework here and figure out what we're going to talk about tomorrow night. Dr. Ed. Who's Dr. Ed, Bella? Very good, Mace. I'm glad that it's actually working. It does like using your name. I'll agree with you there. I use ChatGPT to look up things, but it's not really a normal part of my scrolling routine. And that is wild, Cat. And speaking of that, Cat, I mean, I have a cousin that smokes all day and acts like that. He's not chill at all. And every so often, he just loses his mind and becomes insane and just becomes abusive and a dick. So some people, when they smoke, doesn't do them any good. They're still the same old jerk they were before. But all right, everybody, I'm going to wrap this up. Miss Kim, thank you very much for modding all the way to the end. Dana, thanks for being here. Danielle, thanks to you for being here as well. Heather, have a good night. Christy, good night. Kat, have a good night. No Hype. We're all always hyped to see No Hype. Rooster, thanks for all your help, my man. Tim, have a great night, sir. Autumn, you got it. What did you say there, Jennifer? Melissa, you have a great night too. Bella, thanks for your insights as usual. Mace, thank you for that insight into Sheriff Nandis's video there and recommending that. Good morning to those in the UK is right. Have a great night, Dee. There she is, my sister. Summon. Yes, I believe it, Jennifer. I believe it. You would think that normally with drinking, right? But not always. Some people, they smoke and they become a freaking jackass. But those people, Dara, have a great night too. Denise, great night. Good night, Dana. When someone's like that, you can't even play their game. The only thing you can do is just cut them, because there's no use. All you'll do is drive yourself insane trying to play their game. And there's no use. There's no use playing the game. So screw them. But all right, have a great night, everybody. And I'll see you all tomorrow.